to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Anna, do we have any public comments this evening?
President, the Corps, we do not have any public comments today.
In that case, I will not be reading the statement regarding public comments unless, Hilda, would you like to make a public comment this evening? You know what, let's just go ahead and get right to it. Jeremy, will you please take it away?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
If I could get the team to come on up. We have a large and wonderful team tonight. I'll be introducing them momentarily. So tonight's presentation is all about digital wellness. Good evening, President Zakur, trustees, Dr. Pletka, and cabinet. Tonight we're starting with a presentation on digital wellness, then a question and answer session specifically on the presentation. Then our hope is to take a break and maybe send our presenters home. And then after the break, we'll come back together and board members will be talking, sort of discussing and unpacking what they've seen and possible future direction and what you've heard once you've sort of seen what our current direction is around this area and around the goal. So I want to introduce our group. First, I'm Jeremy Davis, Assistant Superintendent for Innovation and Instructional Support. Then we have Josh Holmes, right there, our Director of Networking, Information, and Data Systems. We have Wes Kriesel, Director of Innovation and Instructional Support. Rosanna Fonseca, Director of SEL and Family Support. Esther Kim, Program Coordinator for Ed Services, and Dareen Khatib, Administrator Health and Wellness for Orange County Department of Education. So we're excited to have an OCDE expert in the room to talk with us, so we're excited for that. As you all know, we have a new board goal this year, which I'm incredibly excited about. One of my big passions is information literacy. About 10 years ago, I was asked to help write the California State Model Library Standards, which are based completely around information literacy. And it's one of the things that was most important to me, and really working on information literacy for K-12 students. The addition of this goal has added a greater focus to our work in all of these areas, and it's greatly appreciated, not just information literacy, digital citizenship, online safety, and I love the in and out of school piece. That's really important because, as we'll talk about in a moment, it's so vital that it's not just a thing for when they're in school, it's their whole life that's really important that they understand how to be safe, they understand how to absorb information, how to understand bias and things like that. So we're going to be covering a number of areas tonight. So if you take a look, we've got digital wellness. What does that look like? Infrastructure, student curriculum, parent education, teacher professional learning, cybersecurity, and our new MDM, which I think you'll be excited about. Digital citizenship, social emotional learning, sort of what gets covered under that sort of science, health, and PE umbrella, and then Orange County Department of Ed, and Dareen talking about the collaborative nature of our relationship and sort of where we're moving in the future with some really cool resources they have. And she's also going to introduce a former Nicholas student who's doing some really cool work in this area. We're excited for that. So there's so many ways to be online right now. It's not just our devices. We're actually really comfortable when they're on our devices, and Josh will be talking about some safety measures we have in place. Really the bigger concern is when they're not on our devices and what they're doing there, right? So safety is vital to any endeavor. You don't start a chemistry class and just say, hey, play with the chemicals and we'll do safety third semester, all right? You don't say that. We have our tiny house. We're not saying, hey, go build the tiny house. We'll talk to you about powers, tools, safety, like in June. No, that's first thing. First thing is always safety, and it needs to be here too. Our kids are on day one, and what does that look like as far as safety? So we don't really want them using the power of the internet without understanding both the dangers and the benefits of being online. So here's our goal, is to teach students how to be their best selves online and in person. It would be nice if it didn't matter if we had a filter or not because they were behaving. We didn't have to block certain things because they were just being amazing little digital citizens. And we'd like them to be not only taking care of themselves, but taking care of others. And that's a big part of what we do in this is they A lot of times when there's problems, someone else knew about it, and it's usually a friend, okay, or whoever that is. But it's really nice if they understand they should have helped us know about a problem before it became a problem, right? We have had issues, and we deal with them as they come up. We also use them as teachable moments when they come up, and when we can obviously de-identify what happened. What happens is site principals deal with a number of those issues because they usually are a behavior. And it's something where there has been a negative behavior that occurred, and the site principal or the teacher understands, okay, sometimes it just gets handled in the classroom. Okay, someone might say, I'm being bullied. It might not really match the full definition, the power imbalance, the repetitiveness. It was someone being mean. And the teacher can handle that someone being mean, use it as a teachable moment, remind them of their digital citizenship they've been going through, their SEL lessons. Sometimes it rises above. Sometimes it rises to the level of principal, where a principal needs to deal with it. And there are times when it also rises higher than that and it gets to our department. And usually that's because there's some kind of evidence of a crime that's actually committed on the iPad, whether it's an inappropriate image, maybe an inappropriate image of a minor that has been taken or shared. And that then involves the police department. And that's important that we have a system. And we do. We have these I should have brought one. We have these really cool metal-lined bags called Faraday bags. And what the site knows to do is immediately put the iPad into this bag, because then it can no longer connect to a network. It couldn't be erased. It couldn't be tampered with. There's nothing that could happen to that iPad. Once it goes in that bag, then they bring it to us, and then we start our investigation, and we involve the police if it's at that level. But otherwise, it tends to be more behavioral. And if it's a behavioral intervention that's needed, if the same thing was happening on the playground, then the principal handles it in the same way, just online, but they use their behavior interventions. We have instances of things like fake Instagram pages, pretending to be one of our schools and then putting embarrassing photos up. And we do everything we can to report that. We actually sometimes send it out to teachers and say, hey, we know a bunch of you are on Instagram. Can you please all report this account? It's impersonating someone. It's showing children in embarrassing situations. Can you please report it for abuse in these 3 ways? We get like 100 reports, and sometimes it still takes a few months. The National Center for, help me, Missing and Exploited Children has a neat tool that we can also use. We can send it out through them and sort of say, please help us get this down. But again, sometimes they're not quick to move, but we do everything in our power to try and get things down when we can. Okay. We've also reached out to our insurance provider, ASKIP, to ask if we can customize our annual mandatory reporter training. Because when you're doing mandatory reporting, why not add in if you see an image on a child's iPad? That's part of mandatory reporting, because that can be an indication of abuse. And so we're asking ASKIP if they can customize that for us. And I have a feeling once they customize it for us, they'll probably push it out to all the other districts, because they'll say, oh, that's a good one. And that happens sometimes in Fullerton when we bring up an idea and they're like, ooh, let's show that to everyone. So we have asked that. And we also had junior high students attend a human trafficking seminar at Cal State Fullerton this year, last school year, which we felt was very successful. And we have people in the room who attended that, and we think that'll help in prevention, because the more information, the better. And when they see it's important to us by sending them somewhere, that's vital as well. So I'm going to introduce Josh, who's going to come up and start us off with infrastructure and cybersecurity.
Fun topic. So with the ever-increasing amount of people connecting to the internet, cyber threats have drastically increased. Therefore, we continue to prioritize network cybersecurity. So these are some of the areas that we're going to touch on. So starting with our internet filtering. Our internet filtering, it's in place to really make sure that the websites that our students get onto are safe, not only at the district office, but also if they go home or if they connect to a Starbucks. When it comes to our firewall, it actually protects our network from outside threats. It's monitoring the traffic that's going through our network, controlling it, and also it's proactively identifying imposters that are in different countries throughout the world. So it's always working trying to identify those things. Our data backup, it's really a big piece of our ransomware readiness situation, where the way it backs up regularly, it has the ability to mitigate a ransomware risk because of the way we can retrieve it. And it also has off-site backup areas where it's not only being backed up at a different location, OCDE, but also in the cloud. And when it comes to trying to improve and maintain that network stability, we perform network vulnerability tests annually working with Orange County Department of Education. So what's nice about that it identifies the weaknesses in our network, and it really helps us to proactively figure out the strengths that we have that we can keep on expanding on. And finally, our cybersecurity training. We have now been going out having presentations throughout the community. We've been making videos. We've been providing different types of resources to different ones, but all with the intent to make sure our community knows the evolving threats that exist, helping our community now not only recognize, but how to respond if that risk occurs, and doing our best to make sure they stay safe in the cybersecurity realm. So now let's give our attention to Wes Kressel.
Thanks, Josh. Good evening. Today that I am, okay, they told me which button was forward and back, but I still, all right. So I'm excited to share a new feature with you of our mobile device management software that we are bringing forward to empower parents. So this summer, we implemented a new mobile device management software. We call it the MDM for short, and it allows us to manage all the student iPads in the district. And so this new software is going to allow us to give access to parents to control after school hours use of the iPad. So I'm going to take you through a couple of the things that are part of this. It's called Screen Guide. So parents will be able to configure daily screen time so they can limit how much time the iPad can be on and used after school hours. They can also do app lock, where the student is locked into an app. You know, you're supposed to be doing reading. Here's the reading app, and that's what you can use your iPad for. So it can prevent distractions when it's time to study or rest. They can also remotely lock the device, and then they can show or hide apps so their students have limited access depending on what the parent wants. So we're excited about that. The instructions on how to implement Screen Guide are on the district website, and we're going to be rolling out parent training webinars and recording those and providing those recordings so the parents can follow along. I did it. I was sitting in the office with Sarah Gerhardt, and I played the parent, and I locked her iPad down real good. All right, so not only that, we have digital citizenship curriculum, and so I'm excited to share with you a summary of these resources and the approach that we use. And our approach to student learning is focused on targeted lessons from Common Sense Media, and so it has the following 4 benefits. So Common Sense Media lessons address top concerns from our schools. It prepares students for critical 21st century skills. It supports educators with training and recognition, and it engages the whole community with parental and family outreach. So our relationship with Common Sense Media is that district partner. I talk with Sue on the phone or via email several times a year, and so we make sure that the newest resources that they are coming out with are matched with the needs that we are finding out through our school. We also have educators log the lessons that they deliver, and so we use that in the application process so that our sites and our district can be recognized with the Common Sense Media recognition status. So our K-8 digital citizenship curriculum from Common Sense Media was created in collaboration with Project Zero at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, informed by extensive research, and the lessons tackle contemporary digital challenges. They equip students with skills for future success as digital learners, leaders, and citizens. All right, so each year, each classroom, each teacher in K-6 provides instruction in 3 targeted lessons for their grade level. And this includes videos, interactive lessons, quizzes, and real-life scenarios. And it also contains family discussion guides and extension activities for the family. At the junior high level, the site principal plans for digital citizenship approach that so the lessons are delivered through ELA or through advisory, whatever best works with that school, for example, so that every junior high school student receives the targeted lessons. And the information in the lesson is carefully designed to match grade level and developmental appropriateness, and the lesson topics fall in the following 6 domains. So you can look here, it's media balance and well-being, privacy and security, digital footprint and identity, cyberbullying, digital drama and hate speech, relationships and communication, and news and media literacy. And these lessons have been selected so they spiral over the years, so students get repeated exposures to them, but at more sophisticated levels as the student is older. So far from focusing solely on our students, the Common Sense Media materials equips educators so they can facilitate meaningful conversations and activities about digital citizenship. Our approach also, as I mentioned before, encourages parental involvement because it provides resources for digital citizenship conversations at home. And then I've already mentioned some of the topics. And then because we value and promote student voice, choice, and agency, we interviewed a few of our students right before COVID about what they were learning in their lessons, digital citizenship lessons, and we created videos featuring our student voices to include in our digital citizenship materials. So these videos are now accessible in Thrively, and so students have a peer model where they hear their students, their peers talking about what they're learning for digital citizenships. And then those students, once they watch the video, they can write a reflection and they can earn a digital badge in Thrively. All right, so here's a picture of the matrix, and you see a 2nd grade band and then a 7th grade band, just to give you some representation. Our teachers benefit from training, lesson plans, and teaching resources provided through Common Sense Media. As I mentioned before, each year teachers log 3 lessons, an administrator reviews them, and the district submits the application for recognition for Common Sense Media certification. And we've had this practice going since 2016 or earlier. We aspire for our students to become responsible, ethical, and empowered digital citizens who contribute positively to the online world. And I'd just like to say thank you to the school board for your support in making sure we have the most excellent education possible for our students with essential skills for this digital era. Digital citizenship education is critical in preparing students for success in this interconnected world. We have positive outcomes that result from this innovative and comprehensive approach. And so thank you for your attention to this and your commitment to our students' healthy development in the digital age. Pass that back to Jeremy.
All right, information literacy and AI. Just so you know, all of the art today throughout this entire presentation was created by artificial intelligence. So Wes did that. Not that his intelligence is artificial, but he used an app to create, and so anything you see was actually created through AI. So information literacy is vital. Put these on. And we have at least one lesson each year that we build in scaffold, right, from K all the way through 8th grade. Students need to know there's bias. There's bias in their news, there's bias in their social media, there's bias in their movies and their entertainment, there's bias even in their web searches sometimes. We're teaching students how to discern information, how to look for reliable sources, how to cross-reference those sources for bias. We'll be keeping an eye on artificial intelligence and how it can be used both for amazing things for our teachers and students and how it could be used negatively. There have already been studies showing answers given by ChatGPT can have a political bias, and we need to ensure students understand that and they don't just assume that it's correct because it's a new technology. I want to show what our technology library media assistants are doing. So you might think, well, it's just those 3 lessons over there, but there's more. Nate in the back is one of our TLMAs. So this is a lesson for 5th graders, and what happens is the TLMAs will teach certain skills. So they're one of our front lines of defense in helping students understand how to research and use information. There's one example, and the standards are those California Model Library standards. So when you see the 3.1.A and you go looking for Common Core, they're not there. It's California Model Library standards. But you can see, what are they talking about? Bibliographic information, acceptable format, using more than one source to determine which one's better, and then how do you then cite it using Citation Machine or MyBib. They have to figure out which one was the most valid Okay, and that's part of one of the skills that's taught in our libraries as well. So we're excited that they're a part of our team, and that this has been developed all the way from K all the way through 8. These are skills that are shown by our TLMAs in the libraries. Okay, so now I am going to turn it over to Esther and to Doreen.
Good evening. We all know the modern student is confronted with critical decisions concerning relationships, substances, and various challenges, both in their physical surroundings and in the digital realm. Is it down? Okay. So here at FSD, we foster decision-making within real-life contexts, empowering our students to identify opportunities for avoiding high-risk behaviors. Through meaningful dialogues with our educators, students gain insights into how media can shape their thoughts. And this enables our students to rise above those societal pressures, allowing for deliberate and empowered choices. Our instruction nurtures an understanding of the traits that distinguish healthy from unhealthy relationships. This builds the ability in students to recognize warning signs both in person and online. Students are equipped with skills to navigate peer pressure and potential high-risk activities, including substance use. Furthermore, they develop the vital skills of setting and maintaining healthy personal boundaries. In a developmentally appropriate manner, our students learn about the prevalence and nature of human trafficking and exploitation. They acquire strategies to mitigate these risks, including the ability to identify trafficking attempts that occur through social media and mobile devices. We actively engage students to communicate with their parents and trusted adults when facing challenges, emphasizing power in seeking help. Through knowledge and skills, our students are empowered to make choices that prioritize their well-being and the well-being of others. So through our unwavering commitment to knowledge and skills, FSD positions students to make conscious and smart decisions for today that pave their way for a bright future. Our presentation today is evidence of how digital wellness is intentionally embedded into so many aspects of a student's experience at FSD. Prevention skills and recognizing red flags are not competencies confined to just one subject area. This slide shows how health education content standards relate to SEL core competencies of self-awareness, social awareness, self-management, decision-making, and relationship skills. In the next segment, we are going to learn about how SEL in our district promotes digital wellness. But before that, Doreen Khatib is here from OCDE, and she's going to share about some more resources that are available to us.
Thank you, Esther. Well, I just want to say, for us at the Orange County Department of Education, our job is to be of service to our districts and schools, and we're so honored to be a partner on many different projects in many different areas with Fullerton School District. I always say you're such a yes district. You're always so student-centered. You're looking like what is best for students and who could support that. Our entire team at Ed Services is at your disposal. Everybody from our SEL coordinator, you're already connected to the SEL community of practice in Orange County, but also our health and prevention team. I really appreciate working closely with Esther. And as you can see, even from information literacy, what we're talking about is skill development for students. And I'm just here to reiterate how much we all value your very thoughtful approach, the district's very thoughtful approach to integrate, not to be like we're going to adopt a program, we're going to adopt another curriculum, and then we're just moving on. I really appreciate that. And as I said, our entire team is here to support that. We really value alignment, so our curriculum and instruction experts could support taking a closer look on, our common sense media lessons and how we could boost that. Everything that Esther just mentioned, all of the health and prevention lessons that are already being taught. How do we boost the online safety component so it is threaded throughout all of the different education that students get? And really, I am a little biased because I do a lot of the work around health, but our goal here is healthy students are better learners. So all of this is really really going to support student outcomes and student achievement. I also want to mention we could support professional learning and professional development for staff. And it's not just us, right? It's not just OCD is going to come in and do that, but really connecting with other experts in our county and across other counties in California. There's a lot of great work happening around this. And if anything, I was kind of sharing early on with the team, it'd be really great for you all as this rolls out, as you continue your work around continuous improvement of seeing what this might look like, to also share with others in our county and across the state. We also talked a little bit about making sure that our families are in the loop. So just like we want to ensure the knowledge and skill development of our students, let's empower our families. Let's make sure that we're building their skills. We give them access to different resources. And we do a lot of direct workshops with families through OCDE, but we rely heavily on our community partners. And we have our Family and Community Partnership Network that you're also connected to in the county that brings together several community partners that have a lot of different expertise. So again, we could lean on each other. And with that, I want to give a shout out to someone in the audience who's very special to all of us, but really Martha Trujillo, who's in the back row, will give us a little wave. Martha works with Orangewood Foundation. So many of you hopefully have heard of Orangewood, but specifically with Project Choice, which is a drop-in center that supports youth who have experienced exploitation. But what's really great to celebrate is Martha just recently completed her master's degree in criminology, and her thesis was all about online exploitation. And she's incredibly passionate because she's also a Fullerton School District alum. She went to Richmond and she went to Nicholas and is incredibly passionate. And I think she's just a great example of all of the resources that we have. And she's been a part of the planning meetings and already came up with 7 different ways that she could support the community, what she could do for families, what they could host. So this is just a great example, and really what a small world this all is, because she has great connections to Fullerton staff who are still at the schools. But that's, Rosanna could tell you a little bit more about that. So thank you for allowing us to be a partner. I'm really excited about this. I know this is a process, but kudos to the school district for the integration and alignment. That is incredibly, incredibly powerful. And we look forward to, the rollout, the implementation, but the continuous improvement piece.
Just a quick shout out. I think
Please.
Darlene also is continuing and moving forward with the Focus program with our police department. And so soon you'll see more of it, and I think training in the next month or so.
Yes, absolutely. We're working with Helene, Dr. Morris, and set up a training at the end of the month. So that is going forward. We're super excited. You guys can't get rid of me. I'll be back. Again, thank you for your continued partnership. Appreciate it. And now let's hear a little bit about SEL. We're going to hand it off to Rosanna.
So digital wellness and social emotional learning, kind of how does that go? I think one of the things that was really exciting was when Jeremy's like, digital wellness, it's like, how does SEL health? Actually, it was really exciting to see how we can really integrate all of these things, because we're not teaching skills in isolation. We really are teaching our students to use the skills they've learned in various different ways. So one of the things that we did, as you saw, Esther, she talked about health and our social emotional learning competencies. Well, I was able to go through and look at our digital citizenship domains and align them to our social emotional learning competencies. So each lesson in the Common Sense Media addresses at least 2 social emotional learning competencies, and some of them even 5. So every single lesson is completely aligned. I did a correlation analysis of all of them, and they really, we really want to, as our SEL curriculum aims to develop and teach the SEL competencies and really help our students to grow, but we need to purposely align our SEL competencies to our digital citizenship so that our students are able to apply the skills in digital wellness. So it's not skills in isolation, but transferable. So, in addition to the SRSSIE and the Rethink Ed survey, which we use to monitor, is our social emotional learning program working? Another component is performance tasks. The second step has, we teach second step from pre-K to 8th grade, and there are 4 units. And the third The third unit in grades kinder to fifth are empathy and kindness. And from 6th to 8th is thoughts, emotions, and decisions. And in Unit 4, it's problem solving and in managing relationships and social conflict. And so what we're looking to do is to work with our FETA to see how we can build in that the digital citizenship component into our second step performance task. So really building that extra layer. It could be, how, this is how what bullying looks like at school, but how does it look like online? So being able to talk about in the different situations, what does that look like? So for example, 8th grade performance task is creating a guide to healthy relationships. I mean, this just aligns really with what we're talking about. So the students are required to produce a guide to healthy relationships, and then to aid with the digital component of this task, we would provide additional resources and assist students in forming tactics to safeguard themselves and others online, enhancing the overall performance task.
Thank you. And I love that last one. I'm going to go back just for a second. The idea of, okay, the original was we're going to create a guide for healthy relationships. And in my head, I see a Venn diagram of here's healthy relationships in real life, here's healthy relationships online, here's where they are the same, and here's where they are very, very different, right? So helping students to understand the differences and adding an online component into something that already exists, and that's what's important for us to sort of focus on as we do the next semester.
I just want to say, I think our kids don't think of them as separate, right?
Yeah.
Online and in real life. Mm-hmm. We tend to use those terms, but their real life is online, and
Yep.
and their real life relationships go online. So integrating those,
Yeah.
I love that.
100%. So sort of our summary slide here, we're excited, for our collaborations and the ongoing work. Just to summarize, teachers are currently doing the 3 digital citizenship lessons right now, like literally as we speak. It's this time is when it's happening, and they were the original ones that we had. And then we're spending this first semester working together as a group to see what second semester should look like. Do we improve lessons we already have? Do we take a look at second step? And do we make modifications like we just talked about, adding online and digital components into SEL lessons that are already there? Right? And then we've worked with FETA, which is our Teachers Association, and we're actually going to do a teacher task force to review and come up with those modifications, so they're on board with it. And then we've asked them for a resource library, because when Wes met with Darlene, our president, she said, there's a bunch of stuff teachers are using that you might not have given us that they love to do extra. And we said, well, why don't you give it to us? And then we can take a look at it and we can give it back to everybody and sort of say, this stuff is amazing. So that's a piece that we're working on currently. Very excited on those parent webinars. When Josh and I did a lot of the online safety last year for parents, one of the questions was, how can I control this iPad once it's in my house? And we would say, well, lock it up in a safe. Okay, that's one way. but what we heard it so much, we went looking for a new technology, and we found it. And so we're going to be doing webinars and get those instructions out so people can control the device once it gets home. And I think that's going to be a big deal for our parents this year. And then we'll be presenting with OCDE in January. So after coming to a bunch of our meetings, Darlene said, could you come in January and talk about what you've done to integrate this across SEL, across health, across digital citizenship, that it's not skills in isolation that we talked about. So we'll be happy to go do that. And then really the excitement is not a bunch of brand new things. The excitement is there is a flow that we were already doing something here, something here, something there. We're now going to make it better and recognize the flow. Why not have the SEL standards built into what we're doing in digital citizenship? Why not recognize what the TLMAs are doing and say, yes, this is a part of how we educate our students, and what does the entire picture look like? So we're really excited. The information have a designed flow. It's vital to understand online safety and digital wellness aren't just a few lessons, but really are just the life skills that we should be teaching throughout the year. So on that note, I'd like to say thank you to this amazing team. So thank you. And I'd like to ask questions on the presentation itself from any of our presenters, because I would like to eventually let them head out while the board sort of debriefs and breaks down the goal itself later on. So questions specifically to this, and any, if you want to call them by name, we can have anybody come up. I can field some. Just let us know.
I saw my colleagues taking some notes, so I'm sure that they may have some follow-up, but thank you so much. We asked for this, we needed this, and for me to wrap my head around it, I had to think of it as like a three-dimensional structure that our children are walking through and getting these lessons. And then you have this great term of art in here, spiral by design, where they're seeing it, and it just it felt like a light bulb moment for me. And I'm just so grateful that you all are in charge of this and thinking about this, because our younger son got a phone, and they always have their phone in their hand, and it's just I would tell them to put it down, except that I have my phone every day. So this is the world that we live in, and this is just so important to have this conversation. So thank you. Is there anybody from the Board of Trustees that would like to maybe begin with any specifics or follow-up or comments?
I do. I think my questions are pretty simple. I think my first question is probably for Rosanna. And speaking to the two-step process in Unit 4, when you talked about managing relationships and social conflicts, so what does that look like? Is there some type of restorative justice practice that's integrated into that?
So the lessons are, they aren't explicitly in there, the restorative practices aspects of it, but we do work with our teachers on teaching them effective statements. How do you communicate effectively? We do, whether it's called effective statements or I statements, depending on who you're asking, they are a way to communicate effectively in relationships. And so there are pieces that are not explicitly put in there, but they are present.
Awesome. I have them separated here. Don't know who this one is for.
I think it's Esther.
Sorry, getting louder. Is this Esther? Is this? In effective decision making, like examples of topics that we're discussing. So you talked about dialogues in that aspect as well too. Are there some examples of kind of what topics and what we discussed in the past, and then what does that look like moving forward?
Sure. So we try to frame everything in a real life context, so it's related to something that could actually happen in real life. So there would be like a pretend dialogue between me and Rosanna, for example, where I'm like, oh, I met this guy online, and he's been saying this kind of thing to me, but now he wants to meet, what should I do, kind of thing. And then that would open up the dialogue to the students. So we try to frame it in real life context, so it's not like if they see it in real life, it's recognizable.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Who's having that conversation? That's happening in a classroom setting?
Yes. It's happening in the classroom setting. Yes. Probably the most concentrated is in 7th grade, because that is a focus area in 7th grade, but yes, in the classroom.
And is it typically then it's in either the health classes or the science class that our kids
Yes.
are receiving in 7th grade?
Yes. So it's either it depends on the school. It's either in health class, science class, or PE.
Okay. Do you know I'm just curious, which curriculum or are teachers supplementing it, or is it with the specific curriculum that they already have for those courses?
We have a catalog of resources that we have for our students, and I can send you the catalog, but yes, we have specific things, so it's not like they're searching randomly on the internet. Yeah.
With guided questions, I presume.
Yes, it has a teacher guide in there. Yeah, they do. Yeah, so it does say yeah. It does give them suggestions on what to say after, to close this dialogue up. Yeah.
But what I think is so powerful, I've done this for years with students, is they come up with really great answers too, right?
Oh, no.
So the way they would approach it versus the way a teacher might approach it or a parent is always different, but they oftentimes, if we are supporting these negotiation skills and these refusal skills and confidence in who they are, they can come up with great solutions too.
Agreed.
next question that I have, and I'm just trying to go through these. I got one more. I think
this is great.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Common sense. Who's that? Who did that? Wes. So the portals of the different aspects of it. Is this something that like parents would like that, or even pretty much I guess parents? I'll say we, but because I'm a parent as well too. But can we go through these portals and see what the kids are doing as far as like the citizenship component to it, like? So we as parents understand what the kids are going through.
Yeah, absolutely. So Common Sense Media, there's an educator tab at the top, and that's where the lessons are housed. We actually download them and put them in our Google Drive just for ease of sharing within Google Drive, and making sure that we have the version that we want our students to have access to, but they're identical on the Common Sense Media website. Yeah.
Available in Spanish?
I believe so, yes. Yeah, our matrix has linked to Spanish slides, and there is, I think the kindergarten's maybe is not in Spanish. There's like one gap there, but we could translate it.
But they use it in the DLA kinder, so they must, they translate it.
The last one that I have is probably for Josh. Josh, so you talked about cybersecurity. Infrastructure for that. Are we having to improve our current facilities that we have to be able to kind of keep up with like the demand of either new space, location, so physically infrastructure is what I'm talking about. New buildings, are we outgrowing what we currently have to place, I don't know, I'm imagining like a network board or something like that. I don't know, do we have to improve facilities for any of this? That's
great question. We are, like a lot of the things that we are touching and doing, especially when it comes to those topics, it doesn't expand. It doesn't necessarily doesn't mean we need more hardware in that situation. But we are, because we do have things that we have in place that are actually improving our infrastructure. We've already had improved our new switches. We're getting edge switches that are going to be connected at every IDF, at every school, which connects our infrastructure, which has more security protocols that we can put into place, because now they're modernized because of our switches are over 8 years old, and that's what connects all the network together. So that's the backbone. We just changed the fiber recently that connects everything together. Now we have the ability to expand, and we've just upgraded our access points physically, and it improves a lot of security protocols that we didn't touch on. And then when it comes to the actual, I'm going around, we're trying to make sure all our IDFs are properly secured in themselves, and then we're even assessing if there's some power usage and things in that area. We're trying to see what we can improve on with what we have, but those are always things that we're keeping aware of, because it does start with a lot of the physical hardware. Things we're talking about when it comes to backup, we paid for that, and that doesn't take space up, but there are a lot of physical equipment that we have put into place that is just put into place this upcoming year and last year.
So do you foresee more improvements in that aspect in the near future, just to keep up with like these new modern ways to?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's the things that we have in place so that are already have been approved. Once we put those in place, then it's going to set the foundation actually to add more features. A lot of things we could not have done before having a phone system, before upgrading certain things, until we put those physical upgrades. So yeah, we physically swapped out a lot of equipment, and then we have more that are going to happen this year, and even in 23, 24, or 24, 25. We're in 23, 24. But you can't actually go to these next steps until we finish this foundation. So we've been doing a lot of foundational work, if you notice. A lot of little things that are happening, but they're going to be the stepping stones to increase a lot of our security protocols.
Awesome, thank you.
I was just going to jump in here too. I'm really excited about the new technology that allows and gives parents more control over the device. And I think one of the most powerful things parents can do is to say no.
Yep.
And one of the most powerful things is to set boundaries.
Yep.
And with the technology, with the iPad, but also by the way, with kids' phones, you can set what time. It's easy. I have 6 kids. I have done it with all of them. And so to encourage not only parents to do it, but our team, I would say every parent should know how to do this. Every parent should be able to, at some point, not that most children, but children at times do abuse the device. Sometimes it's just staying up too late. Should know what controls they have, and it's one added tool. And so to our team, if this was one thing, there are many things, but if there was one thing, is to empower our parents to know that they can reclaim the device and reclaim boundaries. And I hear parents all the time say, I just don't know what to do. My child's on the device and I can't make them stop. And so there are ways to do this for our kids. It's good to have boundaries.
Are those lessons online?
For parents?
So I think the 2 pieces. One is, I know we're going to be pushing out, but as far as like how to do it, I think Jeremy or Josh, you want to touch on that?
Yeah, there's really 2 parts to that. So in the work that Josh and I did with parents around cyber safety, we gave them a lot of resources for places to go for software options. Now, we as a district don't say, go buy this one, right? What we do is we say, here are 3 web searches we did. Here's Parenting Magazine. Here's PC Magazine. Here's this other like mommy blog we found. And they all had a top 7 ways to control your child's device. And we talked to them about cross-referencing. We noticed 1 was on 3 of the lists. It was like 1, 5, and 7. We noticed 1 was like 1 and 2 and didn't even appear on another list. And then most of these lists also had a, what would you use this for? This one works on Apple, but not on Android. This one works if you have a PC at home and your child is a gamer. This one is best for this. So what we don't want to do is say, go buy this thing, right? Because what we want to do is empower the parents to dig through these blogs, to show them how to research, and then to say, okay, yes, this is the one I want to go test out. This is the one I want to try with my students to see how I can limit that. So there's really a dual piece here. One is your basic screen time apps, like on the Apple, we can show parents how to use on an Apple device or on an Android, whatever's built in. Then the other piece is empowering them to look if they want to purchase something that's a better filter, that's a better control device, that's better than what comes built in the device. So it's really a 2-pronged approach that we take when we talk to parents.
But are we going to be introducing a new management system, you're saying, for parents on the tablets?
Yes.
That at least for many of our schools we provide free of charge, and then multiple. Yes. Are there any schools where there are schools where families are paying for the devices their kids are using?
No. Every single school provides, either the district or the school provides 1-to-1 iPads for every student from K up through 8th grade. So so that's being provided, and then so what happens is that mobile device management.
I was going to say, I feel like not.
No, we don't charge insurance.
But Fissler, instead of iPads,
Laptops?
uses laptops.
Oh, sorry, I apologize. You're right. One school has a BYOD program where if they want to purchase the laptop, they can. They also have borrowers. Sorry, you're absolutely right.
Okay, so there are some schools that have laptops that
Just
parents
one.
pay for,
One
but
school.
otherwise.
Yeah, one school
All
is a Fissler
devices.
only. And what happens is if they bring their own, we are still the administrators
And
over
wiping
that
it.
device, and we
Yeah.
still add the mobile device manager to that device.
Okay.
So we have the same controls, and the parents would have the same controls.
Just though to add in, so the new technology, that new MDM would allow parents to have control over that device, usage, applications, even times when they can even be shut off, in essence, not the actual iPad, but the network part. So that's one of the pieces that our team is going to be doing. It'll be going out to show parents. That's one in a lot of my, as I go out, I'm going to let parents know this is a very powerful tool. Then the second piece is what Jeremy said. In addition to that, for your people's personal or private
A
devices,
Yes.
there are tools, but actually built into places, whether it's Verizon or whoever, there's parental controls on kids' phones that you can shut down, whether that's messaging or phones. You can actually say which phone numbers they can access or not access. parents, we have a lot of control, and I want to help, and we're going to lead and guide to make sure that that parents feel like they can take back some of that control.
So,
But-
so we're talking
but
about
the mobile device managers are like an app on our program, on our devices.
Yes.
But not in general on people who don't have children in the Fullerton School District.
No. Yeah, so those it's just for us. It's doing a number of things. It's helping us to push apps out as teachers want. It's how teachers control what apps the students see. It helps us wipe devices at the end of the year, things like that. We've always had one. It's just this one now has the parental controls and some better technology. So we wanted to move to it for a number of reasons, but this was one thing we were looking for, was how can we empower our parents to have that control once the device goes home. And now through their app, they will. Basically, they download an app or they go to a website, they go to their child's device, it's got a code, they type it in, and now they have full control of that device, and they can do what they want from their phone, and they can control it that way. So that'll be a big parent push this year is, here's a webinar if you want to come, here's a recording of the webinar if you couldn't come, here's it in Korean, here's it in Spanish, here's it in English, here's how to do it. It's very easy step by step. You can watch the video, and then we'll obviously train our staff to do that as well.
So as you're talking about if a student brings their own laptop in or their own device in, do we put our MDM on that as well?
Yes, the only school,
Like outside of Fissler. So if I'm at a
Yes.
different school,
you wouldn't be bringing your own device because we provide the iPad at every school.
but do all students do that, or are there some students that still bring their own devices?
If they bring their own phone or whatnot, that's one thing, but that's typically not used in the classroom setting. They're using our iPads only, and all of those are in this and controlled by this, including at Fissler. If they do a BYO, a bring your own, then that's part of our agreement with a parent, is that we have that control over that device. Mainly because if not, there's a lot of issues that could happen, as far as the child having access on the network and being able to hone their hacking skills in ways we don't want them to hone their skills on our network. So we control those. Yes.
The high school district issues one, and our high school students are still bringing in their own.
That's not us.
From what I've
Yeah.
seen,
We
but I
gotta
just
teach
wanna
them
make sure
good
it's
digital
not
citizenship.
That we are
It's not
watching
us,
that,
the
right?
high school.
Not it. Yeah. No. Not us. Yeah.
So while we're on this topic of this parent management system, I love that we're offering this more opportunity for parents to be engaged and realize the power that they do have to set boundaries and teach health. We all need to learn how to teach healthy boundaries and restrictions for ourselves and for our kids. Teach them and model them, right? But to me, it also brings up an equity issue of families that may not have the capacity or may not be engaged with their kids in these ways. And are we doing the best we can to make sure these kids, I know we're doing the best we can to make sure these kids are safe, but I'm kind of wondering what's the default. If I say as a parent, I only want my kid to have an hour of YouTube time a night, can that be the default? Can we set the standards to be kind of more restricted, and then parents can loosen them if they want? And I know a lot of families, they use their phones as a way to communicate with their kids when they're gone to work early and they're not home in the morning as they're getting ready. There are good reasons why families have these devices, but I also want to make sure that we're sending home the safest possible way to use them.
We have the ability to do lots of things with that. There would be a ton of considerations, obviously, things like surveying, polling, probably doing it differently by grade level, because an 8th grader has a lot more homework than a kindergartner would, so you wouldn't want to limit that device in a way that suddenly halfway through homework it shuts off and they're like, what are you doing? And our IT department gets 5,000 calls from kids who can't do homework. So I think there's a balance there. I think we could potentially do some surveys, talk to teachers, talk to parents, and figure out, but I personally am always a fan of empowering parents, like we say, to set those boundaries themselves, because like with my son, we always told him, you have a rope, okay? I don't know if you listen to Dave Ramsey, we stole it from him. You have a rope, and it's really long until it needs to not be quite as long because you've broken trust in some way. So for us, we actually didn't add monitoring software, until the moment we needed to. And that moment came My daughter, it hasn't come yet because so I don't know how much we want to do that, but we can, absolutely. If your question was, can we? Yes. We could. Actually, I shouldn't say yes, we can. Do you? I am 90% sure we could set some defaults because most software has that. I actually haven't dug into this, so I don't want to lie. I want to say I'm 90% sure there should be a default setting like every software has. So I'm 90% sure we could. It would be a big discussion around, do we want to, and what would that look like?
I would like to throw another thought in this discussion. We have many parents who come to the school board to say, we are the parent. And while there are some parents who maybe don't have the time and energy or aptitude, that could be me, to know how to do this, I believe parents have the right to raise their child. And deciding that someone can't do something, so we'll take that responsibility from them, I don't like that. I believe that parents have the right, and if they don't do it, it is a choice they make. And sometimes when you don't do something, you think the status quo, you're not making a choice, but you are making a choice. And there are also those parents who would be very upset with us if we put in defaults that they did not want. They want to give as much rope as possible, and then they'll decide what they want to do. And we're giving classes to teach them how and what blogs to go to and how to do this. And at some point, we don't raise the child. The family raises the child. And we've seen that in the last couple years, parents coming in and saying to us, don't censor, don't take over our parental responsibilities. And so while I think in a utopian world what you say is great, don't have fault with it, we also can have an option for parents. If you don't know how to do this, go to your classroom teacher and ask for some help, and they can set it up for you. Or phone up the district and maybe we can walk you through it. But to just decide this is best, and what's best for one child may not be best for another or another family, I think that's a really tough thing to call. So I think we have to be careful about that.
And I mean, I hear you, Hilda. I in no way want to take away parents. I mean, as a parent, I don't want those decisions taken away from me. I think the question is like, does a kindergartner need YouTube all night? You know, do they need access?
But do they do it? Is a question.
I think it depends. There's also, there also honestly is an equity issue because sometimes our device might be the main device in the home. And so it might not be that the child accessing it after certain hours too. So it would be, again, absolutely as a possible, it would be a very deep conversation of how that could possibly even happen.
More complex.
In some cases, they are the family device.
Yes.
So you don't want to do that.
Initially, that's what we wanted when we first put out devices. We wanted the child to go to bed and the parent to play around with it all night to teach them something that they didn't know, and there's always something they didn't know, and give them the opportunity to advance themselves by using devices that we had provided for their child.
Trustee Talavera, did you have any other questions? I was going to maybe turn it over to Trustee Berryman if she had any questions for our amazing staff who have been standing this entire time.
I'm so sorry you guys are standing. I'll try and make it fast. This has been a wonderful presentation. Thank you. I'm so excited about the integration between digital safety and wellness into CEL, into all of the lessons so that it's integrated, because I do think that's the way to do it. It's not a lesson by itself. It's something that we're going to do all year long. It's not something that's going to be one module and you're done, because I think that you make this a habit and you just have to keep going, and it does have to build on that. So I'm very excited to see that. I did have a question, because I know that part of the Common Sense modules also have a family media agreement that I really like in pulling that off. And I know that, you know, from what I've heard, that some schools use it, some schools don't. It's not very consistent. But there is an agreement that the family can sit together and go through all the prompts and go through each one of the sections on taking care, staying safe, thinking first. And it gives that family an opportunity to sit down and talk about how, how as a family they perceive this, right? So then you go into how long does it take? How long should you be on? And so I think that incorporating something where, as we start to talk about the policy later, talk about bringing this whole piece in, giving parents that, let's start that conversation, and from that, let's do this MDM, and then this is what we're gonna do as a family. So I think it could go into that. So I think that's a great tool to use. Going back to the management device piece of it and parent training, I do think it's very important that we are very proactive about this. To what we're saying down here is that some parents don't have time to do this, right? They don't have time to look at the webinar. Some of them are intimidated by it. They just don't know where to start. In things that I have done in the past where we feel like, okay, people are just so overwhelmed with this, we bring them into a big room, we bring on our computers, and we do it with them, right? And so walking alongside our parents in a workshop or at each school, after a PTA or a DLAC meeting or some time where we have our parents together, at open house, wherever it is, setting up this room, open house, come on in, right? And so giving them time that they can schedule to get in there and actually do it and have somebody walk alongside them, I think that might be helpful for a lot of our parents. I do get concerned about limiting the time only because I think that those devices are sometimes the entire family's device. I think that digital wellness, and this might be the second piece of this, should be written into our wellness policy, because I think that might be where we start to address some of these things. Because we talk about all the other wellness, right? And we are saying this is digital wellness. It's a great time to open that rabbit hole, because that that wellness policy needs some attention as well. So I think it's a good time to look at that for that piece of it. I think I did have some more questions, but I'm sure that they'll get answered as we go along. So I'll be done.
All right, great, thank you. Did you have any questions or follow-up or comments?
First, awesome. Thank you all. Thank you all. You've thought of things that, God, I wouldn't have thought of, and I wouldn't have known, and I wouldn't have known how to do. One suggestion I'd like to make is I would like our press to have the dates and times of our parent meetings so that in all languages, in all areas, parents have a knowledge if they take a newspaper, and maybe even that, is it channel 3 on the TV that gives community service announcements, putting it there so that it can be spread like gossip in the wind, and more people will go to it and understand that if they can't make it, it's okay because we have it recorded. And if they can't make it and they don't understand it, have a friend help them with it because their child doesn't want them to know how to do it. So we just know that. Okay? When Jeremy, when you spoke about crime, inappropriate images, the ASCA customized program, and fake pages, which I don't know about you, I probably got 5 today. That was after I rescued my mother in Siberia who needed to get out of jail. Okay. So, that being said, are you frequently, infrequently, never, whatever terms you want to use, seeing this occur with our students? Because sometimes we have policies and they're great, but I don't want to say they're irrelevant. They're there for protection, but we may not even encounter it. How often do we see crimes on our school environment?
For it to rise to us is not often, maybe 2 a year. that
Oh,
get
that
to our
little.
department, maybe 3 a year. However, it does happen at the sites. I know Dr. Morris is back there. She handles a number of these where someone calls and complains, has this happened on the iPad? It might not get to us because it might not be a crime, but it might be more bullying, like a significant case where they're helping out, the counselors or the mental health professionals are helping out. So there are things that don't get to us, meaning me, Wes, and Josh, when I say us, IIS,
Yes.
because IIS is much more focused on the workings of the device itself. So across the district, I'd have to sort of survey everybody to say how many times are we seeing different things. A lot of times, if it's online, it gets to us pretty quick, like, hey, Jeremy, you need to check out this web page. And I go and look. We had one situation where it was one of our middle schools, and it was a fake Instagram page, and someone was taking pictures in the restroom of kids who were using the restroom. Luckily, there were no actual images of actual nakedness, but it was still a compromised position, and there were like 4 of them, and it was pretending to be one of our schools. So it had like the name of the school with a bunch of like spaces in it and then like a little exclamation. So it looked sort of like it would be one of our schools, but it wasn't. That was 2 years ago that happened. And again, we sent out an email to like as many teachers as we could saying, we know you all have Instagram. Can you please report this account in these ways? Let's get it taken down today. And sometimes it goes down quick. Sometimes it takes months before they'll take it down, but it becomes an ongoing task for us. But again, not often. As far as actually receiving iPads and Faraday bags, twice a year maybe, where they say, hey, we think there's a problem with this account. Can you look at it? And again, we call the police on that because I don't want my staff looking at something that could potentially be an image of a child that's inappropriate. So we bring Fullerton Police and get them involved, and then they do the investigation. So typically that few times a year to our level, but I know that it happens. I mean, sites call all the time, hey, what would you do in this situation? And again, there's a positive behavior intervention systems. It's just like if it happened on the playground and it happens over here, they then intervene and they then fix the problem. The child continues learning.
So just a little context too. So when we talk about like the crime, it is a crime, but what are we referring to? Most of the time, it's cases, usually junior high, and it is, in some cases, boyfriend, girlfriend, ex-boyfriend, ex-girlfriend, sending pictures of themselves unclothed to a boyfriend, a girlfriend, and unfortunately, sometimes then that gets passed around. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking like what would happen, that's usually the scenario.
What I really wanted was to integrate into my mind, is this an hourly thing? Is this an annual thing? Is this a semi-annual thing? How prevalent is this type of behavior in our school district? Because that gives me a better understanding of what to focus on and how often and things like that, which leads me to another thought. There are things children have always done, name calling, bullying, stuff, right? Mm-hmm. It expands to the internet and it's there forever, and that's
absolutely
really sad. But I don't know, sometimes I think that there are only so many naughty things a kid could do in a year, and have some naughty things gone by the wayside, sort of like people don't necessarily telephone each other anymore. They prefer using a device, even if they're in the same room, they prefer a device. And I don't think that's horrible, it's just a different way of life. Are we seeing some type of negative behaviors that kids really don't do anymore? Or does everything still play in its place?
I think one of the reasons it's so important to do what we're doing here with the education piece is that students will figure out we can see everything they do, and then they'll move to their phones, which is why helping them be better people, like from the get-go, we want this to apply to every device, not just the stuff we have control over. So I don't know, I'm sure if I thought on it, Hilda, I can come up with something kids don't do anymore.
Toilet paper.
I just wondered if you just can expect they're not going to do it.
I can tell you my son now knows how to swear in Russian because he plays video games with some kids from Russia. So that's a new thing for me. I'm like, wow, okay, that's, like, why were you speaking Russian? He's like, oh, you weren't supposed to hear that. I'm like, oh, why? He's like, never mind, it's fine. I'm like, oh, that was a bad word. Okay, so But so I know there are new behaviors online we're encountering, but
Well,
I
it's
also know
cultural
yeah.
interaction. It's okay.
Yeah. So our goal is to do everything in our power to help them understand the dangers and the benefits on how to behave as a great digital citizen. So that's where this comes from. Is at some point they will just put aside the iPad because it stops working at 7 p.m. because their parents have gotten the MDMA. YouTube stopped functioning, and they'll go to another device in the house. And that's where, again, our parent education as well as the student education to understand how to make the best choices, how when someone asks them for a picture, they know that's not appropriate relationship, that's not, and how do they have negotiation skills to say, no, I'm not gonna send you that picture, and why, and how a person who loved you wouldn't ask you for that, those kind of things. So that's sort of where that's why the whole educational piece is, because it might not be on our device.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Josh, this is another sort of crazy question, but I know a couple places that have been hit with ransomware blackmail, and I was really interested in your data backup for the ransomware and that it's off-site, so it's sort of protected, but do we feel pretty good about our system for protecting from ransomware?
There's always room for improvement. I would never, because technology is evolving every day, every minute. When it comes to them capturing maybe a file and putting maybe encryption or locking it down so we can't access it, we have the ability to go 20 minutes before that and restore it, and we don't have to pay for them to unlock that. Well, but if someone was to then upload or send information, that's still a way. If someone was to leave a file that has personal identifiable information, that can still happen. A lot of times when it's educating our team of some basic practices of not clicking and going too far and giving that information up, that a lot of times is the human side of it. And I think that's the biggest aspect of where we don't have full control, but we can just educate our team so then they can be more mindful. A lot of times when they're doing great, our staff and the community, they're responding and sending messages to us. Jeremy see it again, and even things that are like, Best Buy, all these random attacks that are attempts, they're very alert, and that's what we really want them to be, because they're going to keep evolving even through social media. But yeah, are there areas? I mean, we feel good about what we have, but then it's still always more things we can do. I see always, like, I'm optimistic and always positive, but there's always so many more things that we can keep doing.
My last question, I'm not quite sure, but maybe it's for Wes, because it has to do with AI. Are we having teachers that are finding a lot of work that isn't being self-generated? Is there an issue here? Do we have to worry about it? Or are teachers embracing it in a good enough way, that giving children opportunity? And you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, so good question. I think there's a couple of approaches there. One is our students turning in work using AI, saying, I wrote this, when they didn't. And so in that case, I think that when our teachers are familiar with our students' writing, like students used to copy out of the encyclopedia when I was a 9th grade English teacher. So when you're familiar with your students' writing, it can be instantly recognized by a word, a phrase. I didn't know you knew that, and you have a conversation with the student. So I think AI in that realm doesn't really separate it from the tradition of educational practices we have with students. However, there is things where we have the potential to have like plagiarism detection built into Google Classroom or Google Docs, things like that our teachers are going to potentially benefit from, to make some of our teachers who are maybe not savvy on that or they miss something. So the technology can bolster those educators as well.
And are for support in learning more about AI?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of support. So we have teacher PD that is being planned so that we can educate our staff on what's being used. And I know it's actually already happening. Some of our TOSAs are sharing tools that teachers can use to generate lesson plans and scaffolds and things for students with special needs. Not putting in personally identifiable information, but just saying in this situation, what are some things I can do to help support the student. So that's one of those is eduaid.ai that we're looking
I
at.
have the greatest hope that work on teacher load can be reduced through the use of AI, and they have to know the skills to ask the right questions, to have it generated in a way they want. And I'm hopeful that that will give them a better quality of life by being able to use that.
Yeah, well said. Thank you.
Thank you, Wes.
Any other questions or comments from Trustee Sugarman?
I love this topic.
Trustee Hanchett?
Well, I love this topic too. It's something that, I've spent the last 20 years looking at how we can better protect kids, especially from sexual exploitation and abuse. So I really appreciate all the work that you guys have done to pull these together. And as people have pointed out already on this board, the integration and the reinforcement of it's not a one-time, we did it, check the box, but really building strong kids that are going to be successful in all elements of their life and the life skills that they need to navigate the online world, which is their world, right? And I was thinking about, this work is so important, and it's important because the most vulnerable kids are the most at risk, but every single kid who has a phone has some risk. And so we need to be teaching every child, and then especially focus on the ones that most need it, right? And so I really appreciate that approach of everybody gets this. And it's, I mean, Dr. Bob asked me, how do you continue doing this work? I am hopeful, but unfortunately we're seeing it's getting worse right now. And I mean, you asked about how often does this happen. My guess is it happens so often, but kids don't often tell us adults. And so it happens on a phone, it happens at night when parents aren't around, and they're not always telling us because they don't know how, and they don't know how to deal with it. I mean, just the research from Thorn, an organization that looks at online use of kids, they looked at 1,000 children 9 to 18 or 9 to 17, and then said that in 2021, 1 in 6 minors reporting sharing their own self-generated child sexual abuse material, nude images of themselves, 1 in 6. That's starting at age 9. And it's up 60% since 2019 when that survey was first done. Our kids are bombarded with these questions, with these asks. I wanted to share the story. I was at an event with a bunch of junior hires. We were supposed to be learning about how to stop human trafficking, and all their phones started blowing up as those who had an open airdrop started receiving inappropriate messages at an event for junior hires to stop human trafficking. Because if they don't know how to keep their phones safe, they're going to be bombarded with these things. So it's really important, and they face it every day, and they need adults to support them in it. And I love that we're customizing the training for our mandatory reporters. Thank you for doing that. I think understanding images on screens that they may have, but also the other red flags in their behaviors, their appearances, all of those things that may be indicators of online exploitation and abuse. It's really important that our teachers know what to see and then how to respond, so they feel empowered to know that they don't have to, something's going on and I don't know what, but really can respond and see those things. And because I think our teachers are a safe place for kids, but I also love that we're teaching our teachers and our parents how to respond, because parents come to us even because they don't know where to go sometimes, right? They know something's going on, or they're concerned about their child being exploited or abused or bullied, and the school is the safest place to come to say, hey, what do I do next, right? So our teachers need to be prepared for those questions and know how to respond and who to go to. So I really appreciate that.
Trustee Hand, just to clarify,
Yes.
We've asked ASKIP if we can customize. We don't know if it's happening yet.
Okay.
So that's our goal, but I didn't want to make sure that's what
All right,
okay.
love it. I think the last piece I'm wondering about is, I know it's embedded in here, but the elements around social media, I think, is also a really important piece that we discuss with our kids. Our Surgeon General put out a report in May about the impact of social media and the way it's hurting our kids and the crisis of their mental health, but also depression, anxiety, eating disorders, body dysmorphia, suicidality. There's so many reasons why we need to be equipping our kids to know how to engage with it in a healthy way. So I know it's in here, but I'd love to see that piece, a little bit more attention of how we're going to teach our kids to engage in social media, which is probably, they're on it. And whether they have the apps or not, they're finding ways and they're influenced by it. Even if they're not, my kids tell me the TikTok trends, even though we don't have TikTok, right? Because they hear about it in class. So helping them understand and how to engage in safe and appropriate ways is also really important.
Did they see my dance?
No, I didn't. We didn't see her dance.
That's great. Any other questions, comments, considerations from the board?
I just have one more quick question is about for professional development. Do you have a plan on that? I mean, is there something that you guys have outlined on this is what we're gonna do and when?
I think each department has different things that they do. So like with digital citizenship, our common sense has been in place for a while. And so that's going to be something where we work on that together. And if we add new in, we can offer professional learning, but a lot of times the teachers are able to look at the new lesson and be like, okay, I've got this because it's what we've been doing. I'll tell you with the AI, Wes reached out recently to all the principals saying, hey, we're trying to create like this little innovation tribe that might be interested in talking about AI and and maybe play with some things, because we had a great meeting with Apple. Apple came in and said, oh, have you tried this? And we're like, we need a group of people to try this stuff. So Wes is trying to gather that sort of like one or two from each school who are willing just to play a little bit. So there's different PDs. Sometimes PD is just, we want to give you a tool and you can tell us how great it was for your teaching. Maybe you were able to make lesson plans and it made your life easier. Maybe, oh my gosh, I was able to scaffold my learning just by telling it this thing. So the different PD and different, I don't know if Esther or Rosanna, if you want to speak to PD. And
So EdCode does require us to periodically train our teachers around health topics. So we do have one planned in October, and we will be focusing more on the digital aspect of it since we know it's a new board goal.
And then also related to the task force, I think that's the piece. I mean, today we're hoping to get further direction about what you would like us to do. I think, in many cases our teachers have access and have been teaching and utilizing these resources. I think the task force, the hope is to provide focus, to provide integration, and I think the PD will be around that integration more as opposed to, let's say, maybe a specific topic that they have taught but maybe in isolation.
Well, and consistency, right?
Right.
I think it's the consistency across the district.
Sorry.
The consistency across the district is important because, one school does it one way, another school does it another way. I think that as a board, we want, and this is important to us, so it's important that all of our schools are consistent in whatever it is that we come up with and what the district feels is important. So I don't think we should be wavering from that at all.
I don't have any particular comments, questions after this discussion. I found this enlightening, and technology just moves so fast. It's great that we have a framework to maybe try to catch some of the ways that it might go with our students. So unless there's some final comments from any of our staff, any other board members? No? All right, well, thank you very much.
thank you guys.
Thank you.
And Dr. Flecker, you're not looking for guidance on the task force at this moment?
Correct.
But as part of our discussion.
Part of the
two?
discussion, yes.
All right, great. Well, in that case, I'm going to call a 15 halfway through dinner. Thank you, Anna, for organizing this. Dr. Pletka, do you want to maybe just remind us what we're doing here for the second part of the meeting? It's like when you're a waiter or when you're in your restaurant. As soon as you take a bite, they ask, how's everything?
So I think just a couple goals would be, first, to have all of you unpack what this means to you, what you are individually interested in, and then the goal would be to say collectively, what are you charging us with? What is it that you would like to see? I would also ask you to think about, there are different ways a board has to accomplish or to set priorities. And so one of them is a board policy, but you don't need to stick everything in the policy. So here are some different buckets you can put it under. So one, of course, is the policy itself. That tends to be a bit more legalistic, and the audience tends to be more regulatory bodies, potentially courts, and it's about compliance. And it needs to be clear enough that a regulatory body can look at our policy and then look at the law and say, look, yes, the board policy is in compliance with the law. In fact, every year we have reviewers that come out from the state to look at the language itself and say, hey, this meets it or doesn't meet it. So that's one bucket, and it's definitely a place traditionally boards have emphasized an area. The second is the board goal itself. So in fact, in some ways, it's the most powerful tool you have for direction for the school district, for administration, and all of us. And so in some ways, you have the board goal. You've already approved it. What are the sorts of things that you would like to see if you were to unpack that goal collectively? So, and that can be, for sure, can be in terms of orally, we can share that. I would even suggest a third way, which is after we hear what you have to say, is bring back an item for the board to provide like further direction, and in a sense, a stamp on these conversations to say this is what we want. Not in a specific way that on Thursdays at 2:30 for third grade teachers, not in that specific way, but I mean, already we've heard like, well, what about professional development for teachers? So we could actually bring back to say, here's our plans as we move forward. We talked about parent piece, and I think that's, to me, that's maybe one of the more powerful ways that we can really help our kids related to this goal, because the issue, for us, the issue largely is not what's happening at school. I mean, we do have filtering. There are teachers there. There are people monitoring. The most powerful thing I think that we can do in this goal to propel us forward is in the area of parents. So, and obviously that's something you all care deeply about. And so we could actually, again, based on your conversations tonight, put together a little bit of a proposal. We can actually agendize it. And again, you can put your stamp on that. So again, one is what you're doing tonight, orally sharing, and we will conclude what are the things that we're hearing. We'll put it. The board policy, this agendized item that we can bring back based on what we're hearing. And then other kind of generic things that you can talk about that can become artifacts. So as an example, again, not specific, these are the 4 words we want you to use in this letter or that sort of thing. But you can say, hey, we want you to do a campaign around this to our parents. We would like you to do something in social media, in education. We would like you to do some parent letters. We would like, so again, if there are areas of focus in terms of even communication, I think this is a place to do it. So don't feel like you need to do everything and put it all in the policy. You have options to agendize it, and we can bring it back to you and say, this is what we want to do. So with that, I'll turn back over, and maybe I'll have another chip. So go ahead.
I made a ate a chip just now and then realized my mic was on. It could be like a commercial for chips. You know, you brought up something just really great just now, that who's in your crosswalk. Already missing Lori Bruno. But this campaign, you know, who's messaging your kids online could maybe be something that we think about, or who are your children messaging online, just as a broad. You know, one of the benefits of being forward-thinking, I guess, is that we get to start having conversations that maybe our colleagues on other school boards are not having yet. So, looking at the board policy, Anna, if you could maybe put up the amendment that we're considering.
Could I make a suggestion? Sorry.
Yes, please, Dr. Boyd.
Can I make a suggestion to do just some maybe preliminary discussion about the things that you heard that are important that maybe we continue to do, and then maybe what are the sorts of things you would hope that, you know, some general direction. Again, we're not looking for specific, you know, again, on Wednesdays at this time, but, you know, yes, we want a social media campaign. Yes, we would like you to bring back a plan around PD, or those sorts of kind of pieces. And so that's just a suggestion.
Sorry, so just to be clear, let's maybe not put up the language right now, but just broadly speaking, what we heard from the first part of this meeting tonight, what's being done that we approve of, and then maybe areas that we think what isn't being done. Is there anybody that's done eating that wants to talk first? Okay, well, you know, I was just going to say, I thought it was very thorough, and I don't have too much that I'm thinking about that is a red flag at this moment. I do like the parental control piece, and I'm just looking forward to hearing my colleagues talk while chewing.
Well, I'll start just to start a conversation. I'm not going to say everything now because I probably will converse as we're talking as well. But I do believe that a lot of your points, Dr. Bob, are very spot on. I do believe that with the integration of this goal, this board goal, we have that opportunity to really say how we want to do this, and being able to spotlight things that we are helping our parents with. How can we walk alongside our parents to protect our children? How can we make it safer for them? What can we do to provide those extra pieces? So I think the parent training piece, a campaign, like you said, I think is kind of cool. It's like, you know, who's watching your kids, and you know, I think that that's something that
Maybe not scare tactics.
that's been out there for a long time. But I do go back to a lot of times as parents that are busy and as parents that are involved in working and such, you know, we look at our student handbook and our parent handbook and we say, oh yeah, of course everyone has read that and memorized it and knows how to pull out this page. When we know the only reason they look at that is when they need something, right? It's like, oh, where's that at? Okay, I'm gonna look for that. And sometimes it's hard to navigate all the information that's out there. So making things a little bit easier for them, I think, is very important. I think that in our policy as it is, making more of a statement on why digital wellness is so important and why it's so important to protect our children. And as you guys were talking today, I know that you have those words. And I do know that as we're starting to look at the actual policy, I have some ideas there. I do know that we also have the Student Internet Software Acceptable Use document that's embedded in our website that we refer to in our board policy that kind of goes over a lot of the responsibilities and it refers out to it. So I see it, we have a board policy, and then this is kind of like our administrative regulation, or how do you do this? And this is a little bit more in depth. But I know that no one, again, who reads it? And how do we know our parents are reading it? And I think you have incorporated that into this new policy. But again, it was like I had to dig for this one to try and find it, because things are everywhere. So pulling it all together, I think, is important. having a family and a student agreement is important to me. Like I already brought up that, and I think you were already taking notes on that one. I think it's a great way for our parents and our families to sit with their students and talk about their children and talk about that. Accidental misuse of, when, I don't know if we've ever talked about that or if we've covered that at all, is if a student accidentally does something, where are we on that, and how do we, and I know that's probably covered in our digital citizenship, right, right. But again, that those things are out there, and we have to be, right, so, what else? I think that's it for starting my conversation. I do think that, for me, a board policy, I don't want to have it too wordy. I don't want a lot in there, because I'm going to bring up again the fact that, when we look at our wellness policy, that's lots and lots of pages long. But, as I looked at that, we don't have anything on digital wellness, and I think it's a great place to put it in if in fact we're going to keep the long policy that we have. And some of what we might put into this policy might be better suited in our wellness policy, because it's more about, what we're protecting them from, what we're engaging in, what kinds of things are out there. When we talk about exploitation, when we talk about child safety, when we talk about, all those other things out there, I think are very valid, and we need to have outlined somewhere. I am very excited. I really want to see a plan on how we are going to integrate everything, and I think that having periodic reports from our group kind of coming back to us to tell us where they are with that would be really informative. And, and maybe talking about, okay, this is how we're going to do it, and this is where we're going to do it, so that we at least understand how that is working out there. So I'm just starting. How's that as a start?
That was
Did
great.
I give people time to finish their sandwiches?
Thank you so much. Trustee Henchett, did you want to add your thoughts as well?
I feel like I have so many and different directions, but I'm really pleased the way all these things are coming together, and was just thinking about another connection of, we have our board goal around patriotism and promoting democracy, and I was thinking how digital citizenship supports that, and how when our students are able to critique the sources of information and recognize, oh, this is a Russian chatbot, that they're able to discern truth and resources and make informed, wise decisions. So I'd like to see us maybe make those connections, so that this goal is even integrated, this 5.5, I think it is integrated into other goals that we share as well. And I think we saw that throughout the presentation, is how these skills and virtues and characteristics that we're hoping to build in our kids have impact in all areas of their life, right? And yeah, I just keep coming back to maybe this centering on the life skills and the characteristics that we want to see developed in our FSD students. That this idea that they have wisdom in the way that they engage and communicate with others, that they are able to discern true, sources of information and make informed decision, that they have negotiation skills, that they're confident in who they are, so that when someone says, hey, send me that thing, or I think you're beautiful, you should meet me offline, they have that sense of, value. No, it's not fear, it's value. That I deserve to be treated better. That I have people who love me and support me, and I don't need this person to give me those things, So I think it's about that belonging and community that also is protective assets that we are trying to build in our kids, so they're not as vulnerable to these risks that they're experiencing online, So I've just been thinking about seeing all the connections between our SEL and our, health outcomes, and how do we sort of articulate what that looks like across the different elements.
Can I put it in a different way? This
Yep.
sort of just occurred to me, we're in the process or evaluation of Dr. Flecker right now. By the way, I did get the first draft that we shared.
Well, we evaluated and
So,
yeah.
Looking at 5.4, this goal right now, based on what we heard tonight, assuming that everything was totally equal, where would we rate the district and Dr. Pletka right now based on this goal? And if it's not satisfactory, then maybe that's an area that we
Like, where do we
address
want to grow?
going forward. Is that be a good thought experiment? So for example,
Wait a minute, I don't know if this belongs in this form.
well, I guess,
Personal evaluation.
Maybe to reframe it just slightly. What's the baseline? So maybe so instead of it like so much an evaluative piece, if 10 is the ultimate of what you want, and 1 is we don't do anything, where are we? And then what would be more interesting is what is it that you would like to see? We'll have some fun. What's a 10? What does a 10 look like?
yeah. So I'm just going back though, this idea, if this is our goal now, and if the presentation that we heard tonight is what we're doing.
With some, there's some new things that they're saying we're going to do this,
Correct.
right?
Where does that put us on the scale of 1 year from now when we look back? So, I guess one thing might be the question that I had before, or from your email, and the question that Hilda had tonight was, are we having the police raiding our servers? Are we having kids getting arrested because there's a ring of people sharing data? That would be like a 1. That would be a huge red flag. But based on what we heard tonight, there's a very few and far between kind of instances. So that's like getting in the news, children actually being in harm's way. These are things that I would be concerned about. So as long as our policy is keeping that to a minimum, that we're responding right away before things get out of control, that would be a huge, important issue for me. And it feels like we're on top of this. Not just because of our data that it hasn't happened much yet, but it also seems that we have things in place to minimize it, or at least to train our staff how to be involved and respond right away too. So, for example, literally the safety portion. I feel that this framework addresses that, and so that makes me feel a little more reassured that we're taking care of our students.
I just don't know that we have the data, though, to properly assess how we're doing, in the sense of we can have outputs, like we're doing trainings, we're doing, teacher under curriculum, we're doing lessons. But my question is, what impact is that having? And I wonder if we give more space for kids to tell us how things are going. If we were to do surveys with our junior hires, especially, to ask them their opinion of what the challenges are, how often they're experiencing things that maybe they're not reporting to school, maybe it's happening on the weekend on their phone, I think that we'd be surprised at how often it affects them.
We're down the same thing, a survey. Jeremy, you would probably have a better sense of how you feel we're doing as a district, and I know that I'm sure you are probably thinking, this is a great goal, I'm gonna run with this is my goal, I can make sure that this happens. I know that in the survey that we just didn't we ask a couple of questions about
Like
how
the
safe
youth
they
truth.
felt online? We might have a little bit of data somewhere.
Well,
But-
and maybe parse out 2 pieces. I think we do a good job in the schools. I think during the day, kids are not going online. First of all, they're not using our devices online to do the sorts of things we heard. We do have filtering in place. Parents, we have teachers that are observing. And to be honest, in the school day, they don't have that much free time during school, classes and courses, and even at lunch. A lot of the kids, they're very social, and so I would say the questions that we typically ask are questions about what's happening in our schools, and generally that's pretty high. We did a lot of the surveys where kids are feeling safe, those sorts of things. I think the new part of the goal that we have no idea, or we hear anecdotally, is what's happening once they leave our schools. And I think that's the new piece. And if there was a focus that I would say that we really need to focus on, it's that after school piece. It's the bullying that happens when kids leave the school. It's especially the online components.
Yeah. And I think for me, one of the pieces that's kind of really trying to resonate is, and I think this might be kind of the data piece that you're looking for, because for me it would be like the impact, right, of the outputs that we are creating here at the district. But for me, I think it would be specifically on the impact that it would have on their education, right? Are they struggling because, right, they have too much screen time, you know, when they leave our district, or are they spending more time, you know, sending out messages or, you know, whatever it may be, both on our devices, but then also personal devices.
Or are they feeling bullied?
Yeah,
So
do they
affecting
feel like,
their-
you know,
their well-being?
Yeah, but I think again, bringing it back to the piece, and one of the things that I was just jotting down, because I think this would be to like the sense of what Jeremy mentioned, that it doesn't escalate to the district level. You know, a lot of the situations that do occur, but you know, what tools or resources or support do principals, you know, might need to kind of streamline this so it's the same across the district, right? So it's not, yeah, they are one-off and they are, you know, isolated incidences that happen at a school site. But again, you know, principal's usually the one that's gonna be the one being told that something's happening. But and then also, the principal also might be told that the kid's struggling, right? Or that, you know, their XYZ's happening, and then they start looking into it, and it could be a sense of like, well, are you doing your homework at home, or are you spending more time doing, you know, on screen time or whatever it may be, you know, things like that. To me, I think that's where I think the outcomes should be tied to the impact that it's having on the kids' education.
Yeah.
Because I think ultimately that's what we're tracking, right? I mean, that's what we're here to do, not in a sense to just, maybe feel like a sense of belonging and community aspect to it, but also tied to their education somehow.
Well,
You
I
know?
think it makes me think of two things. I think there is an argument of, you know, we're here to teach children, give them a public education. And so there is an impact on even the behaviors outside of class impact how they show up for class, and whether if they're, you know, I have personal stories of fifth graders being bullied online, and then they show up to school and they're awkward with their friends. I know, you know, if they're staying up, I've had junior high teachers tell me that their kids are watching YouTube all night and falling asleep to the background noise of white noise of YouTube, and that they're not sleeping well. And I have a friend who's a pediatrician who says kids are not sleeping because they're online all the time, and that contributes to an ongoing cycle of like depression and anxiety because they're not sleeping and they're not healthy. And so those things affect how our kids show up, right? But then I also think about, we don't always see the impact of what we put into our kids right now, right? We teach them science skills so they can be scientists. We teach them reading so they can be authors. You know, like the impact of what we do shows up later in their life. And I think that some of these things, these life skills and these values that we're teaching them to care for themselves and others, we may not, like, if we're not doing it well, we may not see, okay, these many children are being human trafficked at 12, right? Maybe we will, but maybe we protect them at 17, and maybe we keep them safe. You know, we're building the assets that they take with them for their life. So, I mean, exploitation and sexual abuse happens at all ages, but especially early puberty. 11, 12, 13 years old is when children are being exploited and abused online. So we want to protect them now, but we also are investing in them to be safer, established, healthy young people who it goes with them. So even if we're not seeing the outcomes of evidence of, you know, we had this many bad things happening and now it's less, we know that we're doing what's right for these kids in their future.
Given a foundation of safety.
Absolutely.
That's what we need to be doing.
Yeah, and I think that's the other piece that I had down as well too. So like the parent education and even engagement component, because I think if we leave it up to solely the kid or the student, I think that's going to be really, really challenging because of all those like challenges that kind of come with it, and like the way things are, like they're coming to school like we're expecting them, right, to come and learn, but and then we know there's all these other kind of components that kind of come with that, right? And I think involving the whole family, I think like the parent component is, I think it's going to be really huge for me. How we engage the parents, right? Like even though they might not have, right, the time, the resources, the energy, you know, the know-withal. I mean, I think that's where us as a district, right, how do we engage them in different ways and different strategies, knowing that, right, each community is different, each group of parents is different, but so having different ways to still get that information across, but, you know, being creative in that sense, and I think, and or innovative, right? Like, I mean, that's what we do here. I mean, we're innovative, we're creative, we can do that. I think that's where I feel like our strength is as a district, is being creative and innovative. But now to get that information out to them, you know, it's going to take some time, and you know.
Well, and you have to do it in different ways.
In different ways, yeah.
Yeah,
You just can't have, you know, information shared one way, or you know, having them come to us, and again, to like your point, like knowing that, you know, some of the students, the most students being impacted, right? They're gonna get hard to get. It's gonna be hard to get to them, and to share this information, especially to the parents.
Yeah.
You know, but I think that's right. That's a task that we got to take on both as a board and as a district, of what's that gonna look like? You know, and year to year it's gonna look different. But again, to me that's gonna be a huge point, because if we do leave it up just to the student itself, I mean, that's, you know, you're asking, you know, I don't want to say a lot, but I think it's going to be hard. You're truly going to need like that support, whatever that may look like, you know, at the home. Yeah. For me, just knowing, again, a little bit of life dynamics and like organizing and, you know, connecting with community. To me, that's going to be the different ways. But I do feel like that the district could do a really good job of, again, being innovative, creative, to get that information out to them, not just, you know, one way.
Luckily, that's in my job title. So
yeah,
I'm on it.
Innovative, yeah, right. So, but to me, I think it's going to be, how do we get it to, and it might, again, that might be the parents, it could be the caretakers, it could be grandma, grandpa, right? It's going to be abuelito, abuelita, or aunt and uncle, whatever it may be, you know, whoever's, you know, watching them while, again, maybe, you know, the parents are out there, you know, working.
And it's those most
caretakers,
vulnerable kids.
Yeah, for
are
sure.
The ones that are not going to have the people that are going to come in and do this. I mean, those are the ones that are home alone because their parents are working, or they don't have somebody at home that's watching after them. They are indeed alone. And I think those are the kids that we really truly need to be looking out for and figuring out how are we going to protect them, because they're the ones that are going to get those messages and feel like they need to engage.
Definitely.
Because that's the attention that they're getting. So,
and I think the one huge piece that I took away from the presentation is like that empowerment piece. You know, like maybe empowering the students. You know, to right, like share this information with them, like make it exciting, so it's not like, you know, just, oh, I did this survey and it's just, you know, back of my mind now, because, you know, all I'm thinking about is, you know, what's for lunch tomorrow at school, and playing with my friends, or the project that's due, or the project that they're working on, whatever it may be. Yeah.
And just some thoughts too, in terms of like outcomes. I think the things that we have a lot of control over are things related with students. So bullying, those are the sorts of things that we can measure. You can even measure on an annual basis. And I think, and we can look at it, right now the questions are geared to basically bullying in school. So we could add some questions related to, it's really, there's a nexus between what's happening in school and what at home, and it goes back and forth. So I think we could add some questions related to that. The exploitation is really a longitudinal piece. There is no great way for us to measure, and to be honest, in most cases we don't know. I mean, if somebody is being sexually abused at home, most likely we won't find that out. Yes, we have reports of abuse that do happen, but there really isn't a great way to measure what we're doing. And to be honest, I don't know how much impact a school has where children are being truly exploited by adults, whether they're being kidnapped, whether they're being sexually abused, because that, to be honest, it's not about the child. If they're being sexually abused at home, or they're being sexually abused in the community, or they're taken advantage, we can help with an awareness piece, but that kind of assumes that the child has all of this control. So,
Wait, say that again?
So it almost puts the kid slightly at blame if to say, well, if you had just done this
no.
thing. So I think for us, we want to be careful of what is it that I think schools can control, what they can educate, and what we can have a great impact. So I think we can have a lot of impact on kids with kids. The things like even sending pictures. I think those are the sorts of things that we can influence. I think being the online, like kids getting solicited online, those are the sorts of things I think we can have potentially an impact that we can help. The big picture of again, all the horrible things that happen to children, I don't know if, I think our impact is less. I don't want to ever say we have no impact. But if you said bullying, we have a large impact. Someone being kidnapped, someone literally being abused. So I think from the board, what is it that you would like us to put that energy and focus, and then what are the sorts of results that we, if it's to measure, that we can measure year to year? I mean, a lot of things, if we educate them now, maybe at 17 or maybe at 16, we can also help them. We can help them now, but I don't know if you're going to see the results from year to year.
I think that this topic is so broad and so encompassing that it really has to be broken down. For example, I liked what Leonel said about our job is to educate the student. I think it is. Our job is to make sure our teachers are implementing all that they need to implement in in a program that hits every area of education. And it sounds like that we're on the same page as our district, and that makes me super happy. I couldn't have had that conversation last year because you don't know what you don't know, and I wasn't well enough informed and educated to know what I didn't know. And I'm really happy with what I'm hearing. Are we a 10? Nobody can be a 10, but we're doing a really good job in stepping out ahead. On our board well, let me give one idea here. Well, I'll go there later. On our policy, which is what we're sort of looking at, the last paragraph of the first page says, parents will acknowledge they've read the acceptance and use agreement during online registration. I don't know about you guys. I don't think there's an Apple use agreement I've ever read. I don't think there's an app agreement that honestly I've read. I barely read the bank account agreements that I need to read, or contracts. And therefore, I hate having things that are phony in our own documents. And that's a phony thing. And I guess that goes to your point about legal. Okay? You signed it. I'm sorry you didn't do it, but you signed it. Okay? But I don't know how to rewrite that sentence because, when we first gave out laptops, I know this is old and long time ago, okay? When a laptop was given out, a parent had to come to a meeting first. They showed up and we went through the rules, and it wasn't an option to whether they read the rule. They heard the rule, they saw the rule, and they were handed the rule. And then they signed off on it, and it wasn't until they signed off that we handed out the device. And a team from your department went, Bill, were you part of that? Went to every school on the day that they were going to be giving out their devices, and they did that. I don't know if we would ever go back and do that again, but if we really expect parents to know what we're handing them and what we're expecting, to know that they have the capability to go in there and change settings, I'm almost saying maybe we need to do that, if not on the school level, on the teacher level, somewhere, because to expect that we contact the parent, that we put it out in a newspaper, that we put it in the PTA bulletin, blah, 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 and expect the parents really heard it is not true. We know. I would say 50%, don't listen to any of it. Oh, it's a note from the school district, boing, on the news, on the, you know, they're not going to say, don't forward it to me anymore, because they don't want their child to get in trouble, and they believe that we have spies that look into that. But that is, I like things to be honest and straightforward and what we really expect. So that's on the policy, my comment. Other ways we might contact parents besides going back to your kid can't get the device to you, show up. And we had surrogates show up for the family. We did that.
Don't we do rollouts now?
I don't know if we do
They usually
rollouts
come
like
home
that.
from school.
They come home from school. But
Teacher gives
The
them
junior highs.
junior highs, but
okay,
elementary
but we
kids just
had-
get them.
We had grandpa coming. We had one man, I have a picture, I still have his picture. He had 6 kids with him. It was at Nicholas Junior High. He was the only one available to sign off on 6 neighborhood kids, and he didn't have a kid in the school. But he brought home what we were doing and shared it, I hope, with the parents. At least there was an adult that knew what the responsibilities were. We have our block parties, and my God, they've grown. The turnouts are immense. It's probably because Congressman Newman gives the ice cream. I don't know, the pizza, the ice cream. But we could have a classroom open during those and teach parents how to use their devices to protect their students better. I mean, there are, I'm sure you have better ways, but it's just one of the ones that came to me. I am truly concerned about children not sleeping. And I know that sometimes at night I want to stay up and see the weather, or I want to stay up and read my book. And I get sucked into my book, and it's 1 o'clock in the morning, but I have something that I have to get up for and be at by 8 o'clock in the morning dressed. That next day is going to be horrible. I am not going to be at my best because I only got 4, 5, 6 hours of sleep maybe. I need more than that. I know the children do the same thing. Mom and dad go to bed, they're on their phone, they're playing games, they're talking to Russia on the device. And I don't mean that funny, but you don't know where they're playing with, and they're having a great time, and it's a skill, right? But that's a question I'd like to hear on the survey. You know, about how many hours a night do you think you need to sleep? Because they're going to put down 6, 5, you know, I'm too good, you know. And maybe we also ask it of the parents, how many hours a night do you think Johnny needs to sleep? Because when Johnny comes to school and he's not reading, or he can't comprehend science and he doesn't listen to whatever we're teaching him, it basically can be that he's not a bad kid, he's so tired, he just can't function. And maybe there's something we can find out, and maybe I'm totally wrong, maybe it's my grandchildren, and so whatever. So knowing sleep time is important to me. The issue of human trafficking, I truly understand, and, you know, we've probably all seen the Sound of Freedom. That father was a good father. He thought he was doing something good for his children. We don't know the way people sneak into getting hold of children, older, younger, how all sorts of other types of deviant behavior in my mind occur. But it's really fair. I'm thrilled that we're giving the education. I don't know how we measure if they listened, were they awake, you know, did they really, does it take 10 years to know if they've been trafficked? I actually will tell you, I've had a person come to me, she knew that there was abuse going on in the home, and the mother was ignoring it. She said, what do I do? said, you go tell anonymously. Oh, and she didn't want to say anything because she didn't want to be isolated from the family. This is her family. I said, go tell the high school, don't tell the principal of the school you think this child is having these issues. And she did. And in truth, yes, it had been going on for years. 2 other children in the family, 3 girls, and they were not being abused at that point. The entire family was destroyed. The husband went to jail a couple years. They no longer had someone to earn a living for the household. The oldest daughter was, I guess, 12 or 13, so she wasn't taken to the same place that the 2 younger ones were taken. The younger ones felt if she hadn't been there, if she hadn't been abused, this would be a whole family. She ruined their family. They had a totally different socioeconomic makeup, and the oldest child ran away from every foster home she went to and is a lost soul, and we think she's in Mexico, but she has a child here. Just because someone reports it doesn't mean the solution is going to be good. And I have a feeling that you see that type of thing too, Bev, in your work. I know Lynn told me she did. But it is really hard for us to feel we carry the burden of everything on us. Our burden has to be give the most help we can give, support the parents, try to find ways to get the parents involved in any way we can. But we're here to educate children in all forms, you know, online, honesty, democracy, whatever. And that's where we start. That's what we have to do. And God willing, the good work our teachers do and our educators do, and the money we put into it, and the staff that's hired, and the leadership we have will make it the best possible of anything. I don't care about other districts right now. I care about Fullerton School District. And when you say, how are we doing on our board policy? We never can be a 10. Nobody could be a 10 on that goal. How are we doing compared to other school districts? 11.5. How are we doing for how we want to do? 8.5, 9. We always have new things we want to put in and new visions. And that's great, and new partnerships. But to come up with one number, I can't do that. I just want to have a policy that makes sense, that we can protect children as much as we can, and that we can support staff as much as we can, and give the little prod that they can't close their door and ignore, that we want this infused in everything, and that if they have an issue, they can feel safe telling their teacher, or a child can come forward and talk about another child, but we can't think that every solution is going to come out perfect. That's sad to me. That's saddest.
Well, I think we want to be careful, though, not to say that just because some situations don't turn out perfect,
right. No, I said
that we don't want to report abuse, because it's really important.
We want to report abuse. We just can't walk around with guilt. I mean, I had a little guilt, right? That I told this aunt to go to the schools, and the whole situation came awful. I mean, I helped with raising of that little child because of my guilt, but we still have to do it. I mean, we want to, if we say 1 out of 5, yay.
Well, I mean, statistically right now, it's expected that 1 in 10 children experiences sexual abuse before the age of 18. So this is affecting our kids.
Of course.
And we have to. Our kids also deserve to know, be educated that they have the right not to be sexually abused, right? So I think it's important that they know they can come to us as trusted adults. And I was thinking about, you know, that question of how do we measure when we're making progress? I think when our kids say, I know who I can trust. I know the adults that are safe. I know what to do if I have a problem I can't solve on my own. I know who I go to. Those are measures of success. And when so many children are affected by this issue, unfortunately, it means that our teachers do carry some of that burden. And we as a school district carry some of that burden. But that's what you do as adults in your community.
Not just our teachers and our principals, our custodians.
Absolutely. Yeah, all of our staff who may be the trusted, safe adults for these kids' lives, right? And so that's why it's so important that they're trained to know what to look for, how to respond, to say, thank you for telling me, let's make sure you get to a safe place, and report that or talk about it. Yeah, the solution isn't always perfect, right? Families, but it didn't start out perfect. So the question is, how do we make it better? And
we want our staff to have the right to know if they do good, if they do what they think is best, they can't carry a burden.
No, no. It's not their burden to carry, but they can be. I know so many survivors who have said that one caring adult who said, you deserve better, or you deserve to feel loved, or you deserve to be in a healthy relationship, that is what helped them turn their life around. It is what makes a difference. And so I think part of their holistic education is to know their right to be in healthy relationships. But we know California Healthy Youth Act says that that's part of what we have to teach them. And then we measure, did they learn it? They take quizzes and tests on these things, right? So part of that is healthy relationships and understanding those things. But also, I think those measures of success are, if we're surveying our kids, do they have safe adults that they can go to when they have a problem they can't solve? Do they feel comfortable going to adults? And then hopefully we are teaching them the skills, both where and how to help themselves, how to help friends, so the burden's not theirs to carry, but that they have support around them to do that.
To some of the points that Dr. Pletka brought up and that Trustee Henship brought up, and of course that Trustee Sugarman brought up. Is there more data that we're trying to get at this point, Trustee Henship? So for the questionnaires that we ask our 7th and 8th graders, is there some direction that we want to give to ask maybe more specific questions?
I have a question on that. We still have, it was called the Healthy Kids Survey, but it's not called that anymore, right? It's called.
Oh.
Right.
Youth, and there's Youth Truth? Is that the same?
Youth Truth.
No, so Youth Truth, we're not doing anymore.
But the old Healthy Kids Survey is now something else. We still do that, correct?
It has a new name, but yes.
And it did have questions regarding these same things, right? Weren't they the same types of questions in there as well? About safety and about how safe they felt?
To be 100% honest, I've not belonged to none, so I don't know the survey.
Right.
Can we get that?
So
sent to
yeah,
us?
so I think a couple things that we could do. We could curate some questions. One of the things I think we can do, and I think this would be a good baseline data, and we can look to see if we can increase this, which would be, do kids feel like they have a safe adult that they can share something? I think that would be a piece. We can curate some questions. We can find those. I think this whole piece about, we can test kids. We do. Health is a subject. We do give assessments. We could look at over time, do kids get better? So that's an easy one for us. And then I think, this piece that the idea of valuing themselves, that if somebody asks them to do something, that they feel strong enough and confident and a sense of belonging to do that. I think we could probably curate some questions around those areas as well. And for sure, the bullying, that's one that's like, I think it's actually one of our central missions is to prevent that. I think the only piece we're adding is to really say at home. So I think if we're looking for some direction, I think we could bring back some questions that you might then be able to say, okay, these are the things, we can always do more. But.
Yeah, but again, I also don't want to over-test people. If we're doing this already and this is our year, then I would want to look at those questions and make sure we're not duplicating something. Because again, then kids are going to go home and talk to their parents, and they're going to say, oh, this was a question that I had, and they're asking me if I've been sexually abused at home. I think that's what's going to come back, and parents are going to say, well, what do you mean? And so I just want to be very mindful of the fact that we're, why we're doing this, what kinds of questions we're asking, so that people don't feel like we're, asking questions that could be invasive or what have you. But I think that there are questions.
There are ways to ask, like, if you felt like you had a problem you couldn't solve, or you felt unsafe, do you have someone you could turn to? Those can be very generalized questions that allow kids to interpret it without putting ideas of what that looks like, right?
So So I would love to see what those curated questions look like. The other thing that I heard Dr. Pletka say, and again, this is from our board goal, and we've heard the presentation tonight, what are we doing to address our potential liability as a school district with what children are doing when they're not at our facilities or using our devices? Because the board goal suggests that we have to promote some safety in that area, but it's not clear, I guess to me maybe, what we're telling.
Parents will acknowledge that they have read and accepted.
Sure, that's for the devices we give them, but our board goal does sort of suggest that we have some responsibility for.
Well, we're promoting
see it
digital
that way.
citizenship.
Yeah.
We're promoting digital citizenship, information, media literacy, and online safety, both. We're promoting it in and outside of school.
Yeah.
We're giving them that foundation so that they can be, astute, that they know what to look for, that they have that citizenship. But I don't think I'm not sure we can rate something that's outside of school. But if we're providing them with information that helps them in and outside of school, then that's what I would look at. What kind of foundation are we giving them so that when they are at home and they get that picture coming in, what do they do with it? Or when someone asks them to do something when they're doing their homework, what do you do with it?
So I guess does tonight's presentation kind of give a framework of what we are doing? Is it sufficient? Is it meeting what our expectation would be?
I think it's a great start. I would love us to explore the possibility of partnering with the university if we're going to design a survey, because I think that this is a really innovative, important area of growth, and I think that there are researchers that would be really interested to see how we're building these skills in our kids, and especially since we're looking at integrating across different elements of different curriculums and different types of approaches. If we identify a few key outcomes that we expect to see in our children, through the SEL, through health education, through digital citizenship, if we identify some of those key kind of value statements or beliefs that we hope that it develops in them, to see that and have that be assessed, I would think as a researcher that would be really innovative and interesting.
For sure. We can always reach out to the university, and so a couple approaches. One is we can control the surveys that we have access to. So we for sure would not be trying to create questions on this. This is something definitely outside our area of expertise, especially if we start talking about elements of human trafficking. But can we curate questions? Sure. We can go to the Healthy Kids survey. We do have through SSRIE potentially that we have questions that we can ask our own kids that we already are asking. So one of the best things is trying to access things that we already are doing, but then specifically focusing on a construct or a question. So I think that would be easy. For sure, we can reach out to the university. Sometimes they want money, sometimes they may not want it. But we could ask them and see what they can do. Cal State Fullerton, we've had a good relationship over the years. Yes, others as well. I know maybe there's another university that, anyways, no. But different universities, we can get some of those sorts of questions. So I think we can curate questions from a variety of resources that could include the university. And looking at some of the ones, and to your point, we won't be creating any questions on our own related to this. I think the idea too of potentially a profile, what are some of the statements, what are some of the things we want kids to take away? Maybe we can get some, trying to identify what those things are, and reaching out to our professional networks to do, again, if we start talking about basic needs like sense of belonging and sense of connection, but we're also asking for maybe other sorts of things. We want kids to be able to say no, as an example, and to be able to say it from a sense of identity and who they are and what they value, those sorts of things. We could maybe look at what are some of those things that again, we're using some of the curriculum materials and resources that we already do. And then again, I like the safe adult one. I would love to know. I would hope. In fact, that would be if there's one thing very passionate about is does every kid in our district have somebody that they could go to if something bad happened to trust? Like that almost, like if we could do that, that would be pretty spectacular. So those are some of the things. I do have other notes that I took as well that I will try to make order of. But how about maybe one last go around? Could you tell me maybe your top 3, and we'll see if we can find some overlap. We would bring it back to you as maybe some plans. Like I heard professional development, I heard task force, I heard professional engaging parents, everything from our acceptable use policy to engaging parents on the dangers and what they can do, so we can have a parent education piece, our professional development piece, our task force that would integrate those sorts of things, and from an educational perspective, look at how we can provide. And Bev, I know you said something like that's something that there's an integrity, we'll call it curriculum, integrity to what's being taught across our schools. Okay, that's what I have so far, but I would love to hear maybe one final piece. I know we still have the policy too,
So I was just going to ask Trustee Hanchett if the checks or Healthy Kids survey, if we can add those potential questions on there to see how, like if it could be done in conjunction with that every 2 years, so it's not like something new, so it's just added onto that aspect. So that was just like if we can find out when that survey would take place again, if it hasn't taken place in the last 2 years or whatever it may be, if that's okay to kind of just look into that. But and then I had one question real quick. So with the common sense training aspect, the questionnaire, is that solely focused on like education and inside like the school elements?
Not necessarily.
Like
Common sense has some broad topics that of course could be contextualized within the school, but it can be contextualized at home as well. And I think what we would do is, as we're teaching it, and the task force can help us to say, in fact, you even heard performance tasks, being able to expand the context to say now at home. So I think the curriculum is there. I think we can just recontextualize it for children, and I think our task force could help us with that.
Okay, awesome. That was one of my questions. I think for me, so not anything final or anything new, but I think just the parent education engagement component on common sense that kind of aligns both what the students doing as far as digital citizenship, and then both I think really trying to focus on 5.4 where it's both inside school and outside. I think you got to have that with the parent, because the parent's the one that's going to be the kid's thinking digital citizenship, he's thinking or the student's thinking anytime, I guess, right? But more mainly inside the classroom, and I think the parent needs to be kind of the one overseeing it outside of it. So I think to me that's the huge one. Is that?
Right. And it's giving our parents the tools to help.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, giving the
through
parents
this
the tools.
process, because it's
And then
overwhelming.
understanding it too. Like, hey, like they understand what digital citizenship means, right? And then that just goes hand in hand with what the student, goes through as far as going through that process, through that. So that's why I had asked if this is something that both parents or like myself can take. I don't think I've ever seen it like promoted to parents to, hey, take this. But I know that our schools, right,
we can definitely do a better job. In fact, to me, I think the most powerful thing we can do around this goal is to educate parents, because we say we're partners. At school, we have more of oversight, more responsibility, and more ability. But when kids go home, that's where parents have more oversight. And so if we can now say, hey, we can better educate parents on how they can protect their children. And that's a goal. Like, we can get around, we can get excited. And our parents, generally speaking, in fact, it was 94% talked about their partnership with us. So I'm really excited about this, and this would be truly a new piece.
All right, and going on that, if we did a digital campaign or you do some kind of media campaign where, I know that when we were advertising schools were open after the Katrina, what was the last little storm that was supposed
Hillary?
to hit? Whoever she was.
Hillary?
Hillary, we put something on that website that was the same, right? Every single school had it on their Instagram and it was the same message. So if we did something, parent tip number 1, how do you do this? And then just maybe doing small tips for parents.
Bite
There's
sizes.
small little bite-sized pieces, right? One little thing I could do today to help my student or to protect my children or to do that. I think just starting a tip a week, or you don't want to make it too much because people are then not going to read it, right? So you don't want to overburden them because we know how that is. But starting some kind of campaign where here's a tip, here's this, but doing something so that it's not only on our district, but each one of our schools has that same message that they're pushing out at the same time. So I think that again, that goes back to our parent education piece, and that really being able to walk alongside our parents to give them the tools to help them with this, because it's overwhelming and it's it's huge for people, especially new parents, what have you. Professional development for our staff members. I don't want something to be overburdened for our staff. I don't want our staff to feel like, oh my gosh, it's another thing I'm going to have to do. By integrating it, I'm hoping it's going to be easier at some point, but getting there might be a little rocky. By having that task force will be helpful so that we can get everybody's perspective on how we're going to be able to make this work so that everyone's on board with it. But then also providing a little bit of more professional development to our staff members on, what kinds of things, what do you see in a child that is being harassed online? What do you see, how do you tell if a kid is being bullied? Or, what are those small signs that you're looking for with trauma? What's triggering, when that kid triggered, what could that mean? Again, it's trying to give them those skills that help them look for things. Because sometimes those are hard. If you've never been around it and you don't see it, you don't know it. But again, giving our staff members those tools to be having them in their tool belt so they can pull them out and say, oh, something doesn't seem right here, and then they know what to look for, or they know what's not right. So I think professional development is big.
Okay. I really think the parent piece is...
Microphone.
Oh, sorry. Number 1, parent piece. Number 2, safe adult. I think that's really, that impacts education. That impacts education. And I like Bev's idea of a digital campaign. I really like that, Bev. That was great. So those are the 3 things. I would put PD for staff on my list, but you've got that. You're on top of that. So, and the same with curriculum. You guys have that, so that's not on my list. My 3 things for new would be the emphasis on the parents, the safe adult, and I like a digital campaign. I think that's very good.
Do you need this?
Trustee Hedgett, do you want to go on?
Yeah, I feel like I'm reiterating too. I think we've come to a lot of conclusions around, I think parents, maybe it's the age of my kids, but I feel like it's one of the number 1 issues parents are struggling with is how do I navigate the phone, the screen time, and part of it's because no one's done this before. I mean, I remind parents all the time, no one taught us how to be on social media. No one taught us how to put limits on our phones because we didn't have them. And so our kids are growing up in a whole new world and they need help navigating it, and we need help as parents navigating it. And I think part of it is we need to have grace with each other and have ongoing conversations in this, right? Because we're learning as we go. So acknowledging that we don't have the answers, but figuring out and sharing what we do know as we go. So part of that is, I think, empowering kids and having ongoing conversations, but then it's also measuring progress. So I guess that's like parents, empowering children, and then that measuring the progress, because I think because it is innovative, it is new territory, we want to make sure that what we're doing it is research-based and that we're looking at the data and making choices based on that, right? So we know some things are helpful. I mean, I was thinking about the 40 developmental assets that are research-based understanding of what keeps kids safe. Like, if we're seeing that these programs are building the internal assets of kids and they have a stronger sense of who they are and where they contribute to the world, that's a win, right? So I think we can build our approach on research, but we also need to measure as we go to make sure the interventions we're doing are making a difference and adjust when they're not. And because we don't have the answers yet, but we want to do it. I'm just so grateful that we're having this conversation and we're moving ahead in this and figuring it out.
Chad, do you have do you know then, is this no, it's Jeremy's policy. Jeremy, do you have enough information from us to go forward with your policy?
Well, the thing is, though,
Board policy, Fullerton School District Board policy.
This is different.
Well, so, you know,
Yeah, but-
if I may, I think I was not going to add anything to the last thoughts. I think Dr. Pletka has some concrete.
I do. Yes, I do.
Results
Actually, this is great. This
from-
is what I needed.
From tonight's
Yes.
discussion, I think we both heard what Jeremy and his team are doing and trying to do and what we sort of expect. And so I'm just very excited about that. Good luck.
And then what I'll do too is I'll actually turn my scribbles into a real document, and I'll bring this back, and we'll agendize it. And so if I miss something, and to me this is almost, I would say this is akin to a board goal that we've unpacked, and so this is helpful. So I don't need now. I'll bring the document. I would like your blessing on that document. And I think that would be enough for me. And then as far as like, what's the context for this? This is a board goal. This is basically a board goal with some objectives that we can put under it. And then the policy, that's up to when, and how long, and what you want to do tonight.
Well, speaking of that, okay, board policy 6163.4 is before the governing board right now for some discussion. Even some wordsmithing if we were up for it. But we are just a few minutes past 8 p.m. And, you know, I know that also Trustee Berryman mentioned that there were some other board policies that sort of are related to this. Did you want to maybe consider them together? Multiple board policies that overlap or that cover general ideas?
I think I was making reference to the wellness policy, because I do know that since we're talking about digital wellness, I think it would be a great place to embed that, and then put in again, go on the same line as because the wellness policy is written differently from how I read it. It's more of, what our intentions are, what's important to us. It's more there's nothing in the wellness policy that says if you're not well, we're gonna suspend you, right? I mean, it's not written as something that you're gonna use for legal, it's just a policy on what we feel, what our intention is about wellness, right? And so I think that that's where a lot of the meat, I would think, from our digital wellness philosophy should go into, and a lot of what the presentation was this evening about what our intentions are and why we feel it's so important to promote, why it's important to have digital wellness, why it's important to cover exploitation, bullying, abuse, protect our kids, all of those things that we talked about, putting it into the wellness policy as digital wellness. I just thought was a good place to put that, and not, and don't put that in our board policy, student use of technology, because I think the student use of technology is more, we're talking a legal piece. It's where we're going to go back to if something to happen, and we need to see, okay, what's our policy on technology? How do you use this? When is it not used the right way, and what are the repercussions of that? Whereas a wellness in our wellness policy, talks about why it's so important to us and what we want to do and what we want to educate our kids on and what we want to offer to our parents. And so that's kind of what I was thinking as far as the two policies.
So not to put anything back on Dr. Hammett, but I think those would fall under your auspices.
They will, yes.
All right. Well, so, I mean, if anybody had anything, just like a last minute item that they wanted to toss into the student use of technology based on everything, we could talk about that now. Or we can hold it off because we're not under any timeline currently to update this board policy. Is there any?
I mean, I have some suggestions. I could go through them quickly, or we can wait till another date if you guys want to. But I'd say that some of it was related to just updating the language. Like there's some things that I think instead of, we can use more appropriate or kind of,
yeah,
language that's more descriptive of what's going on.
Pagers and adding cloud,
Yeah.
makes sense to update,
Yeah.
for example.
Well, and like online gaming, not just chat rooms, like there's a lot of places where kids are being exploited that are kind of newer. And it's not to list every single possibility, but just to update it a little bit. But I think that one of the pieces that kind of relates to the idea of the wellness of the philosophy was when it speaks to the kind of disciplinary approaches, I think it's hard, we don't have numbers, but like on mine, it's like the second page after the district are not responsible for the failure of technology, and then it says district reserves, and then superintendent or designee may gather and maintain information pertaining directly to school safety. The next paragraph talks about violations and like how students will have their privileges taken away. I think just to acknowledge, I wrote a sentence like, the district acknowledges that children may be coerced and tricked into unsafe behaviors and or policy violations and will therefore work to support and help students who may be experienced harm, exploitation, or exercise poor judgment online. I think, to me...
Can I
Yeah.
slow you down just
Yeah,
a
yeah,
little
yeah.
bit?
I can do
I'm
that.
gonna Try to get this.
You want me to say it? The intent is to acknowledge... The intent is to acknowledge that, our approach is to help kids, not to trap them when they've done bad things. And that it's oftentimes not intentional, and they may be even coerced into the inappropriate behaviors because of, unfortunately, unscrupulous adults that take advantage of them.
And part of that's just FYI, in the acceptable use agreement, it specifically speaks to accidental.
Yeah.
When you do something accidental, report it to an adult immediately. So, especially because there's things like, how did that make it through our filter? We need to know, and we need to figure that out. So, definitely, accidents already covered there, not those specific words. Then it goes back to it's really the purposeful is the intentness, which is then covered in the acceptable use. So, if they've broken that, it's because it's been purposeful, not accidental. Because you're absolutely right. You don't never want to punish for an accident.
Yeah.
Ruthie, can you say that one
Yep.
more time?
So that children, as in,
It's not, it's Anna.
yeah, may be coerced and tricked into unsafe behaviors or policy violations, and will therefore work to support and help students who may have experienced harm, exploitation, or exercised poor judgment online. And that I had it as connected to that. However, when a student is found to have violated board policy, so it's sort of it's if you cut and paste it to the paragraph below that one, as a way of preempting the conversation of when we punish children.
Right, and I see in the policy, in the acceptable use where it is, it's students who mistakenly access inappropriate information must immediately report such access to a teacher or other staff member. Timely reporting of this material may help protect a student against a claim if they have unintentionally violated this regulation. So I do see that it's in the student internet acceptable use form that they all have signed,
Mhm.
apparently. Is putting in too many experienced harm, exploitation, or exercise poor judgment, is that all inclusive, or are we just listing a few things? I mean, I worry that if we start to call out particular incidents,
Mhm.
that we're just locking ourselves into that. Is there a way that we could, if we want to acknowledge that children may be coerced and tricked into unsafe behaviors or policy violation, and we will therefore work to support and help students, maybe, and then not go into exploitation or poor judgment, only because there's other things that could
Yeah,
happen.
I think it's okay to cut it off there too.
And that keeps it a little bit short. I mean,
Mhm.
it just takes it so that it's not just that. Help students.
This language came to us from CSBA, right?
The base language you have to correct on that.
There's two pieces. So this one is, so the white one. So this is our original policy from 2010.
Mhm.
Crossed out and then added in CSBA language. And there were a couple of pieces that actually CSBA is a little old on, because their last update was 2015. So things like where I added cloud systems, cloud servers, got rid of that. Sorry, I'll restate that for the record. So the white one is our old board policy with things crossed out. And Bev, I apologize, that was my fault for starting with CSBA with what I sent you guys. So that was what had happened. So this is the old one, last revised in 2010 by the board. Then what you see added in black is the CSBA language, as base as we could, with a few additions, which would be like, the cloud services, getting rid of MP3 players, getting rid of pagers. Then there were two items that we actually changed from CSBA in consultation with legal and in consultation with ASCIP. And that was one, is that the CSBA had students and parents will sign before they get on the internet. And we said, well, that should really be done through the online process, because it would take so long to get all those documents back. You'd be slowing down learning. Now that most learning starts on the device, you could be months before you got a piece of paper back. If your policy was you can't learn until that point, it would be a struggle. So we changed that, and that was with agreement with ASCIP. They said, yes, you actually should do it online. Second was the acknowledgement around liability. The original CSBA language said that we should have something where parents are indemnifying the district against if there's something that happens with our filter or something goes wrong there. And they said that's actually, you shouldn't do that. They said what you should instead is just announce there is not a liability piece for the district if something breaks. If there's an issue with the internet or whatnot, those damages aren't because of our fault, that we're doing our best, basically, so we reduce liability there. Those are the two
I did
pieces.
have questions about that, because it kind of feels like, the way I read it was, the districts and staff are not responsible for the failure of technology protection measures, user mistakes, or negligence. It feels like, well, then who is responsible? Are you saying that we do our due diligence, however, if it fails? Because what if we just have what if a district had a horrible system that just didn't do any good? Wouldn't they be responsible? Is there an element of professionalism that should be expected, but it's only, I just didn't understand why we're not responsible.
I would add two pieces, and we do have an attorney here, but
okay.
One of the things is negligence. So obviously, if we're negligent, we're responsible.
Yeah.
But if we're not negligent, we're not responsible. And again, we're talking legally. We're not talking about what we're trying to do from an ethical perspective or our, the wellness philosophy. But just legally speaking, and ASCIP is the one that pays or not pays, and this is the language that, in a sense, says these are the conditions at which the insurance would pay or not pay. So in this case, this is really strictly legal language, and I think, to Bev's point, that's why it will feel better if we address some of our philosophical things in the wellness policy, because that's not meant to be a legal document. This is meant to be more of a legal. So And Aruni, please, I know this is your wheelhouse a little bit here, so.
No, I think that's absolutely right. We're just trying to protect the district. We're trying to protect children, but we're also protecting ourselves in this document. So it kind of cuts both ways. It blocks both ways. I do note that with regard to the updated language here, whenever a student is found, this section, it actually says the principal or designee may cancel or limit.
Yeah.
It doesn't say that they shall be punished, and it also qualifies it further as appropriate.
Yeah.
So to me, that does take into consideration any situation where the child maybe is not at fault. It says inappropriate use, may result in disciplinary action. So it's not really saying that we have to punish anybody for any reason. It's within our right. So for this type of document, I would want to be almost as broad as possible, while still protecting the district and ourselves and our children. So there's only one thing that I was going to add. It's it's very inside baseball, but it's the harmful matter, referring to the Penal Code 1, 2, and 3, when it talks about the type of online behavior that's inappropriate. There's a lot of discussion in the Capitol right now, SB 403, and it's adding the word cast. Really pretty narrow, really only affects my community, but it is a really important thing that could play a role in online bullying. So if the board wanted to add cast there, I would support that. Again, I do think this is a very well drafted document, so I would also be fine with not editing this one at all. But
Would that be under number 1?
yes.
Yes.
And so probably right after religion would be caste, C-A-S-T-E.
I have heard so much discussion on that word in the last couple months that I've heard so much discussion on that in the last few months that I would agree with you. I didn't know that they were looking at it in Sacramento, but I've heard discussion on both ways on that word.
On point number 3, it says distributing personal identification information, including the name, address, telephone. I think likeness or images of photos of people is really important, and that's where we're seeing a lot of kids being bullied through embarrassing, even if it's just embarrassing, they're picking their nose, but or images that are altered to look different. And so image or likeness, I think, is another important piece of that.
Right before or other personally identifiable information, maybe we could just put image or other.
After social security number?
I put image or likeness. Yeah, I mean, I had it right before.
My mic was off too.
Including the image or likeness, name, address, telephone. Either way.
Well, yeah, including name, address, telephone number, social security number, comma, image, or other personally identifiable information.
Yes.
Like toplessness. Oh.
Yeah, or like a deep fake or something like that. That's really good. Thanks. Any other edits? Do we want to go back to the punishment? Ruthie, did you agree that the punishment isn't necessarily guaranteed, whether a student makes the mistakes?
I looked at that for quite a while.
Do you want to? Do you want to keep the language that you added in then, just to make it that much clearer?
I mean, I would like to. It's important to me because of. I mean, even legally, minors aren't considered criminals. They're considered victims in these sorts of crimes, sexual abuse crimes. And so if we're acknowledging that even when children willingly think that they're consenting, they're not legally able to consent to some of these crimes. So I think there is this kind of foundational understanding that kids do make mistakes, they do inappropriate things, and they're not always, that we're approaching it with the way that we're trying to help and protect rather than find fault. And that philosophy is important to me.
Okay, great. Any other
Yeah.
any other edits,
Yeah.
changes to this document for the first read
Can I
tonight?
just make one recommendation on that additional language? There's a piece, if you could go back to Dana, that says, coerced or tricked. We got rid of, never mind, okay, yeah, we got rid of it because it had the piece below, so that's good. Yes. I just look for loopholes that, because we deal with a lot of student discipline cases.
Yeah, I don't want you to have to, I want you to be supported, I guess is what I should say.
Do
to
we
do
need
that
to say that we're providing instruction
Mm-hmm.
yearly, like
Annually?
at the
Yeah.
beginning? Yeah, annually.
Yeah.
Just at the beginning. All students using these resources shall receive instruction in their proper and appropriate use annually,
I had that too.
just so that we know that it's happening. We're
Yeah.
saying that it needs to be done every year.
Well, I think we're even saying more than that, aren't we? We're saying it's like part of
Integrated.
every lesson
Right.
plan. It's part of every health
Yeah.
class. It's part of.
I would do
library.
two things. I would just say annually here,
Mhm.
and then use the goals and objectives as a place
Mhm.
for those other pieces.
Yeah. I had a sentence on the next, well, 2 paragraphs down from there. The superintendent or designee shall notify students. But I'm wondering now if it fits better in that wellness policy, kind of more the philosophy, but I had added something like students and families shall also be provided instruction and resources on how best to keep children safe online when using district technology.
I think that would go into wellness policy. I think that's.
Okay.
'Cause that's more.
Yeah.
This is what we're doing.
This is how
I think it's
we're
important.
making sure we're safe. Yeah, okay, I'm okay. Save it for later.
Yeah, make a note of that.
Trustee Hanchett, could you repeat it one more time?
Yeah, sure.
It's not going here.
No, but we just.
You want to save it for later? I can also email it, but yeah, students and families shall also be provided
We're not putting that on the policy.
I'm gonna highlight it.
instruction and resources on how best to keep children safe online when using district technology and internet resources. Maybe that's redundant.
Any other comments, changes to BP 6163?
I still have an issue with that sentence, I don't know how to change it, and I guess we have to read it. Parents will acknowledge that they will accept the disagreement.
You want to say that again on the mic, with the mic on?
Oh, you're so picky. I still don't like the line about parents will acknowledge that they've read and accept the acceptable use agreement. But I don't know what to do about it, not that clever.
Three of us have been doing it though, I think.
I do have.
Well, you sign it. Did you read it?
But I have
So-
a question, I have a question for you, because the internet, the student internet and software
Have you ever
acceptable
read it?
use form
Mhm.
is not even
No.
in the handbook right now.
You've never read it.
Well,
It's.
is it error?
it's-
We have to sign it to get,
Okay, so that's what I'm asking, so you have to sign, there's nowhere on here that says. like,
it's a
signature.
checkbox online.
Right,
Yeah, because
but
it's,
it doesn't mean they've ever done it.
Doesn't mean they've read
But
it.
it, and it's not in the same
you read it?
place.
No, it's 3 pages
as
of
everything
scrolling.
else is.
20
Like,
pages, let's go.
It's not in, if you look under the parent handbook,
Yeah.
it's not in the parent handbook.
Mm.
It is off into
access it later.
internet land somewhere.
So one thing I liked, though, that it says that they will sign a summary of this acceptable use agreement document in the first month of, I said, I think attending school, because sometimes people come late. We do that when we're at a Title I school. You get a paper from your conference with your teacher that says you have the right to quality instruction and textbooks and things like that. We have to, I mean, if you go to at least your parent-teacher conference, you sign that. I think if they're, I mean, assuming it's like something like that, where it's more like bullet points.
I don't
Yeah.
think
We
they do
just-
their iPad unless they sign this form.
Here's the difficulty. So so we are regardless of the parent, if they bring their child to us, we're obligated to educate them. In fact, I would say more than obligated.
It's our privilege.
Yes. So because the technology is so integrated into our learning, we would actually be depriving kids of resources. And so we're a little bit of a catch-22 in the sense that if you said, no, parents, if you don't sign it, your kid doesn't have access. The argument could be made is that we're not providing an appropriate education. So I wouldn't want to put that in there.
I just want it where it's easy for people to see it and sign it.
But we can put it in the parent handbook
right,
for sure.
When I was going through it, I didn't see it in the, I mean, I didn't
We'll
see
put,
it
yeah,
in the parent.
definitely, we'll put it in there.
Or somewhere where they can refer back to it.
Right, easily.
Because
I think a bullet pointed half-page version is also great.
And I did hear, I have heard, and it is in my scribbled notes, that yes, while the policy, you just need to sign it, we want more, and that's going to be part of our educational plan and our parent education piece, and we'll make sure we include that as part of one of our objectives under this goal.
Maybe it can be included in the family media policy kind of thing.
Okay, I have one last thing on the very last paragraph. I'm curious because, oh, sorry, not that. Okay, it says, we're basically saying what we're gonna teach, right? So it's very specific. Social networking sites, which I'd say social media, chat rooms aren't really a thing so much anymore, but gaming, online gaming is. It's very specific. So I either wonder if we want to make it very general and say we will teach about online safety and leave it at that and then move it to the wellness policy, or I mean when it says we're going to teach about how to report cyberbullying, I was like, well, what about grooming and what about exploitation? Like I'd add to it or take it completely
I'd say
out.
good point. I think what maybe splitting the difference by just saying examples such as, and then that's not meant to be a comprehensive list, but just
One of the issues with this one specifically is this is a quote from the Children's Internet Protection Act, which gives us E-rate funding.
Okay.
So E-rate specifically says schools and law. Yeah.
really like this one.
Yeah. No, because I agree with you. It's outdated.
Okay.
However, it's the federal law that says if you're going to receive E-rate funding as a school or a library, you will do this.
Jeremy,
you will teach
that's why
kids
you're
on this,
here.
this, and
Okay.
this. So I would have
We
loved.
could add another sentence.
Yeah, we can add more and say we'll teach on all kinds of stuff. Or I like the IE in parentheses. I don't think that messes with our federal funding if we throw some parentheses around it and add a few more.
Yeah.
It's just that is literally copied directly from E-rate
Because
funding.
it says such instructions shall include, but not limited
Yes.
to.
Yeah, so we can go, we can add a bunch more stuff in
And
there
then we
and
can
keep
add
the
that
not
other
limited
stuff
to.
in
Yes.
the wellness policy.
Yeah.
Because I would like to have that, exploitation, what we're doing in the wellness policy.
Okay.
So timeline, this is just the pragmatics. So what we're gonna do is, Hannah, when's our next? I don't know if we're gonna make the
Next
next
week.
meeting. Is it next week?
We're here every Tuesday.
2 weeks, okay. I would say by 2 weeks, we can get this policy back to you. We can get, I will turn this into objectives. We can get that back to you. And then the wellness policy will wait another month to bring that one back. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Additionally, we'll be bringing back another policy for second reading, which will be the instructional materials. Parents have objections to instructional materials. So
Complaints
that will
and
be coming
concerns.
back. I'll get the board that in advance for you to review, but that will be another one that we'll have to consider at that meeting of the second read. So there'll be a couple of policies at one time.
Okay.
All right. Any further questions, comments, thoughts? Because I think we're close to adjourning for this evening. All
Look
right,
at us
well,
on our device.
If nothing further,
This is
It's a nice-
just the student technology. Are we ever gonna look at, do we have to do anything with the staff one?
We have staff, but it's not technically a board policy. It's a piece that they sign, they also do contractors, but they sign when they're hired, and that's how we follow the technology.
I thought we had a staff technology.
We do.
Board
Yeah,
policy
no.
on staff technology. Yeah.
Sorry, but
We
there's
can
an actual
always
agreement.
create one for you.
Yeah,
No, I thought, yeah, I was like wondering if we had to update that for some reason, but
Oh, no.
I guess we
Yeah,
don't.
we're good.
Okay.
All right, well, we'll see everyone on September 12th for our next regular meeting. We are now adjourned at 8:30.